Hello, hello. I don't know if any of y'all can hear us. We're still trying to figure out this audio issue. I had a buddy of mine say that he couldn't hear any of us on the podcast. So, oh, I think you can. We pulled it up on our phone. So, I don't know what that issue was. We were sitting here for like probably 20 minutes. Both of us have done podcasts before, and both of us were just like, what is going on with this right now?
I think we got her lined out though.
I think so. It was a switch of. I think the only thing that I really did different was switching out that mono to stereo in that one folder, but that folder was deep in there. Like I don't know, not I know it wasn't my kids, so because they're not that.
Well, I think you said it might have been like an update in the middle of
Oh yeah. And there was an update with the studio, with the actual studio program OBS that I'm using, so that very very well could have been it. I don't know if we look grainy or not. I don't think we do, but I'm gonna make sure just in case we don't.
Yeah, I'll pull it up again.
Does it look all right?
So far.
Does it look good over there? Looks good on there.
Mine's
So
delaying just a little bit.
just a little bit, and it will with a live. It is a live stream, so it will delay just a little bit.
Yeah, we still got audio here.
Okay. So anyway, guys, sorry for that interruption. I know it took longer than what we needed to as far as fixing it, but now that we're back on track, we were talking about getting some of these late season. Well, not really late season. I call it late season because I usually hunt a lot of October, and generally on my farm, a lot of bucks move off and don't come back until November. And so I try to hunt that little pinch of, September 25th to pretty much October 30th. Not all the way through, and then I'm usually gone for that first week.
September doesn't even really get me excited anymore.
No.
I don't like hunting when it's hot. I don't like mosquitoes.
I don't. Yeah, I don't like hunting when it's hot. I take September and really just kind of I get down as light as I can, and I go in and I set edge, man. I set the fields, and
Yep.
I set way off where I can see a long way, and just kind of try to study because I think deer do move traditionally in the same pattern for the most part when they start learning farms because the older teach the young, or not really teach the young, but the older deer do things, and the young are obviously going to do what the older deer are doing.
Yeah, I definitely just do more observation sits from afar, like you say there. And a lot of my farms that I hunt, it's those deer aren't going to be there. The same deer aren't going to be there.
Right,
come,
right.
Come the rut, and I think that's pretty general for everywhere.
And do you think that's a question about that? Do you think that that's like due to food reasons, and what foods in each year? Because I'm finding out on my farm that bean seasons, those deer are all there all the way up until October, until pretty much they pull those beans out or they become non-palatable.
Yeah, so kind of what I was just talking to my dad about this, I don't know, a month or two ago, because they're the farm that my wife and I live on. It's a huge farm, but it's mostly crop. And I was telling him, I was like, like I've noticed a lot more like November hunts. The deer are there when I've got beans,
Right.
not so much corn. And combines and stuff are so good these days; they don't leave a lot.
They
behind
don't.
them.
They don't.
So the guys that farm our stuff, they've got the best of the best equipment. And
Yeah.
hell, they farm 20,000 acres.
So yeah,
probably.
yeah. Well, that seems to be everywhere.
Yeah. So I don't know. The later the beans, and a lot of times they do a lot of cover crop and
Like
on
winter rye and stuff like that.
Well,
or-
so they've been doing a lot of rye lately.
that's what's been on mine
but
or ours for the last.
Probably the best
3
year.
years.
So my wife and I have been together 8 years, been married 5, and right before we got married, they planted a cover crop. I think the USDA was doing a like a program where they'd pay for the seed if you put it in and give you a little bit an acre.
Really?
So they were putting in turnips and radishes. I don't know if you remember everybody like, hey,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of gas leaks. No, it wasn't a gas
It
leak.
wasn't
It
gas
was just
leaks.
stuff rotting in the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, dude, I had so many deer, and like I'm telling you, I showed you a picture of this farm.
Yeah. No.
There's hardly any timber on it. It's all finger draws.
When did they plant that cover crop in?
I would
That's
say it was
probably
like-
November then, or I mean,
It was right after they harvested.
man, could you imagine? How did they
Well,
get it
so
in and
it
not
was-
die? Like how did
Well, I
that?
think it was like they planted it after like a wheat crop,
Okay.
and they didn't
okay.
put like a second crop of beans in or anything. I think they
gotcha.
just put it in there, so it had some time to grow, and then it started rotting real bad, like late October,
So it was in the ground in August then,
probably. I'd say.
around August time. Well, then that's normal for turnips
Yeah,
to be able to
so-
grow, but it was rotten probably by
Mid-November.
yeah. I was
But
gonna
you
say
think about it, a lot of guys plant radishes, turnips, and stuff for food plots. Well, I had
all over.
250 acres of it.
Oh my goodness.
And I killed 2 bucks.
Oh my
9 days
God.
apart, one with my bow, one with my gun, November 9th and November 18th that year, on those radishes and turnips.
So do you think they were attracted to that mainly every bit of it because of how sugary the leaf was in that time frame?
I think it just started to turn. You know how that stuff when it turns.
Because it was pretty. Was it
sugary.
leafy, like real good leafy and everything?
This stuff was.
So my
Foot and a half
goodness.
tall, probably.
Yeah, that's insane.
And
That's like the best. That's the best crop you could have for a cover crop. Oh my gosh.
I mean, you could smell it. I live 6-7 miles outside of town. You could smell this stuff in town. Now, we weren't the only ones that had it, of course, but
right. Yeah, you could the aroma. I remember people complaining about that.
Yeah, it made the news. Everyone's like, man, everything's leaking. You know, we got a bunch of gas leaks. No, it was just this stuff is rotting in the ground and it's real pungent. But no, I think what it was is those bucks will follow the does.
Yeah.
And I think they were coming from miles and miles and miles, just coming to this good food.
What year was that? What year is that? Would have been
16.
Okay.
15 or 16.
I don't know if I was back then. Like 2 years ago, we had a harvest, even last year. Last year, on the farm that I hunt mainly, it was all the crop was out by like September 20th, I think, or 26th. All the beans.
Yeah,
like we had that real dry year last year, and I had a giant in there, and I sent you pictures of him last year, and I sent it to a few other guys. I mean, just an absolute pig of a deer, and we had beans, and I've heard from other people and other guys that do a lot of land management, like to just focus on herd health necessarily, versus. Yep. And so I pay attention to a lot of my doe activity before I pay attention to my bucks even, and because I've found that does are going to get the best. They're going to get the best, spot to bed.
Yep,
period.
Exactly.
And the bucks will let them have it, not just because they're courteous, I guess, but they don't really like dealing with does and fawns in that area. So what I've found is I've found if I can segregate a spot to doe just for does bedding, and I've done it in 2 different spots, and it's pretty well worked for the most part as far as keeping does out of areas on the fringe of the farm where bucks might bed.
Yep.
And so now I've got this system that's going around where I've got all these bucks bedding on the fringe of the property, which some people would say that's crazy. Why would you want bucks, fringing, hunting? They're going to go wherever they want. But I've found out that I've kept those does in a bedding area now where not only did they raise their young in them, there's not any bucks pushing them out. So come that time of the season, now I got a pinpointed time for November where I know they're going to run past. Yep. And so but I'm having a problem with this whole food situation. Like it seems like at least just where I'm hunting, and we hunt not far from each other, honestly, just a 10-15 minute direction, and it's got to be. You're saying you're seeing a lot of these bucks, eat beans all the way into till they're dry.
If they're eating at all.
If they're
if they're not rutting around, because those deer don't eat those bucks don't eat when they're rutting.
Right,
they're chasing constantly.
They're chasing constantly, and it's like. And I've heard that, and that's kind of what I was leading towards. So I've heard that a lot of these big bucks will go in there if there's a late bean because of all the protein, but they won't hit it during that rut phase. It's like 4 days after that rut phase, you can't get them to leave beans if they're still standing beans.
Well, and there's a time too that nothing will eat them beans, because they're turning and they're
just not palatable.
I'm not a scientist exactly, but you don't find them there. They'll go once those beans start turning. They'll go back to the green fields. Right,
and I think that really does. And that's talk about timing. Is that big buck that I had last year? The last photos I had of him was the 16th, and they were night.
Yeah,
and it's like he came into that bottom field, or like not really a bottom field. It's like actually it's kind of the opposite. And I say bottom field, but it's up a ridge from a creek bed, and it sits lower than all the other fields in there.
Yeah,
that's kind of why I think I call it the bottom. But he would come into there, and it's like he would eat for 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops, and he was like, "All right, this isn't palatable anymore."
In and out,
and he went back to neighbors. And so I'm trying to get guys that are close to where I'm at, or kind of around here, or just kind of like a Midwest, kind of branching it down into that sense of like, why are these deer switching October? Everybody says because they got fall and summer homes.
I'm a believer of that.
I believe it, but I've also had 5.5-year-old bucks that follow no pattern at all. Like they're doing their own thing.
Roamers.
Yeah. And it seems like the giants that come in onto the farm are those roamers. And it's weird because I hunt them in October. I have more bucks that come on in October than I do any other time.
So it's kind of funny we're bringing that up because this buck here that I was able to get in 2020.
If you guys haven't seen, this thing's a tank. I'm going to take it over here. It's
Go
not
for it.
mounted yet. Check this out, y'all.
Yeah, but he, so the first picture I got of him was in 2018 on a different farm than where I live on. It's about 250 acres, and it's a really good farm. There's no crop on it. It's just a pasture field farm. First picture I got of him was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon during rifle season, probably 15 yards behind one of my tree stands that I was hunting in that morning and had to leave for, I think my daughter Hannah had something going on. I had to leave early, or else I would have been sitting all day and he'd have been right under me.
Yeah.
That's the first picture I ever got of him. Never had one before. I've got a couple of good buddies that hunt to the east of me, and they've never seen him before, and we share pictures and stuff. It's a group of good guys to hunt with to the east.
Dude, I say that all the time. Like your neighbors, dude,
Oh,
they
it's
are
key.
probably the most important part of your hunt.
Yep, it's key. Just being able to share that kind of information. They'd never seen him.
Right.
Well, it was probably, and he was headed west in my camera.
Okay.
Probably 3 days later.
All right, is that the farm that we were looking at? Just
No, it's a different one.
okay.
Yep. So about 3 days later, another buddy of mine, he's like, "Hey, I think I got that buck that you sent me on camera." And he's back east again, 8 miles in
8
3
miles.
days. And
That doesn't surprise me.
it was the
What
same
time
deer.
frame was that? October, you said?
Nope, this is rifle
Or
season.
right November then?
Yep, it was rifle season. I think it was the second day season is when I got him on camera. And then 3 days later, he was 8 miles away on another camera.
Okay, that brings up that point that I'm talking about. When I'm saying, like, we were talking about how we can get some of these bucks centralized into a farm.
Yep.
You know, because of that roaming status. And everybody's like, oh, they're roaming because of does. I think they are roaming because of does. I do believe that is probably the main, 90% of it. But that little bit of a 10% or 20% switch where you can get that deer into something like we were talking about with that 4 days after the rut, 4 days before the rut. I think these bucks, at least from my own personal knowledge, watching them in the field, they're hitting high protein areas right before the rut, not doing anything during the rut but traveling 8 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I couldn't believe it.
that 4 days afterwards, it took 3 days. He probably was in that. He probably went 8 miles in that first day.
Oh, I guarantee it.
And then found a doe bedding area because they say a buck will breed 6 does in that time frame. So it leaves 2.5 days between each doe he breeds. He won't breed the same doe twice. So
Once she knows she took.
Yeah. Once she's took. So, and I don't know how they figure that out. The whole how they figure out if she's been bred or any. I don't know how a buck does it. It's probably smells and scents and
it's gotta
pheromones
be.
and everything. But like, I was talking to a good buddy of mine who does a lot of land management, and that's what he said. He goes, I literally focus on the last week of October, first week of going into November, and then the end of November.
You know what my favorite day to hunt is?
Mine's Halloween.
Halloween.
Dude,
Yeah, my
Halloween's my
favorite day.
favorite day.
So
My exact
my
favorite
dad
day.
has had a ton of luck on Halloween. I've seen a ton of deer. I've never actually killed a Halloween buck, but I think that is like the day that everything switches here in Northeast Missouri.
And I agree with you. I think that I got goosebumps just thinking about that. That's weird. And we were talking about we don't get excited about September. I mean, I get excited because I get to go watch deer, but I don't get excited in the hunt aspect of it, other than maybe taking off a doe or so. But even then, I'm kind of pulling away from doing that early doe hunting on the farm because I feel like, I've kind of tried to curate the property in a sense of where, and this is just a home farm. This is where I can kind of go. I do a lot of public land hunting. You know that I do, from all over the areas. And on my home farm, I try to leave that space. It's like I kind of agree with the Don Higgin in a sense when he's like, I kind of hunt the fringe. I don't really go into my property. Dude's killing 200-inch deer back to back.
Yeah,
That's
scares
saying
me
something.
sometimes diving in deep. You're like, oh man, should I dive in there and get him? I know that's where he's bedding, and get close. And man, it's hard for me to pull the trigger because I've been burnt so many times.
And that's and that's where you look at the Tony the Pratt side of it. They just had this. The reason I'm bringing these two guys up is they just had this world class debate, and a lot of hunters are talking about. A lot of guys are talking about that do land management in general, and it was a debate forum, and I really wasn't that. I didn't like the debate forum. If you really want my honesty, they're two legends in their own. They've been in the business 40-something years apiece. They've both. You got Tony the Pratt, like he can sit down on the property and he's curated and managed it to where he's all about wind and access. It's literally 90% of his stuff is wind access and creating doe beds. And so I follow a lot of that. But then you got like, the Don Higgins side of it, where he's created a sanctuary where bucks aren't leaving it. And so where do you draw the line and what you want to hunt, when you're trying to, because you can't really do both. You got to try to find how to mix those two.
Yes.
And I was watching that debate and they were like, well, Don, could you grow 200-inch deer up in southern Michigan? And I'm like, I don't know anybody that can grow 200-inch deer in southern, Jesus, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to, but like the dude sat and seen 22 bucks in one day.
Now you're telling me about that on small property.
I don't even do that down here, and we've got
it's been
giants.
A long time since
you know what I mean?
Seen
like
that many, and like if ever.
Like I don't know if I've seen. I think the most I've ever seen in one set is I seen 11 bucks, and it wasn't even on my farm. It was a farm that a buddy of mine owns, and it's 500 acres, or 560 something acres, and I just got to go video behind it.
Yep.
And of course, he was after a giant that year. And so we're just watching, dude. I'm telling you, I didn't know what to do at a property like that because I watched a 150-inch deer.
Oh,
and I'm like, oh my goodness! And he turns around, and looks at me, he's like, pretty sweet, huh? And I'm like, that's not the one we're in here. I'm just like,
you
no.
Got Buck Fever in that camera.
Oh, dude, I was way worse than he was. I'm like, I'm not even shooting here, bro. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I get into that whole section, where you were talking about. I was looking at your, the farm that you were talking about hunting. There's not a lot. As far as
there's hardly any timber.
So how do you go about creating an area where, but it almost on these areas that really aren't a lot of timber, I've kind of figured, and just watching, you said that little section that buck walked right out.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. And I had Hannah with me.
But it's secluded, and a doe's afraid to go out in that area.
Yep.
With her babies because she's got to walk out in the middle of that.
So we hunted.
He likes it because nothing else is there.
So that hunt there, dude, I'm not kidding you when I say this. We got there at probably 12:30 in the afternoon. Got there early. I hadn't even hunted that side of the farm ever yet. I mean, I'd lived there maybe 2 years, and I just, there's nothing much there. I'll just hunt the bigger timber on the north and south ends. And well, I had Hannah with me, and we just adopted her. I think she might have been 9, almost. She'd been 10 in December.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't have anything set up for 2 people, and then I wasn't smart and didn't use a harness. I was like, so.
Right. Yeah. No, she's
not going up anywhere
anywhere.
Stand.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll just go sit on the ground somewhere. Where can I go? So I knew that was an easy walk. It's flat. We could park up by the other house.
Easy walk is in like just physically easy walk, and in terrain wise. How is it as far as access? Is it wide open or is?
Oh yeah, it's wide open. It's sketch. That's
what's crazy.
Yeah, but so it kind of goes slightly downhill to a creek and then just uphill, and then you can get to that top fence row, and then you kind of got some cover up there.
Okay.
So we walked like 200 yards down that fence row, and I found some good cover there and a good spot. I could see pretty much the whole field and then the creek, and then up on the other side where
so there is a little creek that runs.
Yep, there's a creek
down
that
into
runs
that little
whole. So that tree line, in the middle, that's a creek, and there's maybe 10 yards of timber on each side.
Here, let these guys see what you're talking about because we kind of looked at it before. I'll get you. You can draw on this thing right here and kind of draw what you were talking about.
I'll just pull it up.
Oh, you can do that, yeah. Here you go. Let me get over here.
You tell me where I need to go. So I've got to stand in there now. You kind of see where my mark is now. But so this deer, he came out right here and walked straight out through this field up to this dry pond that's full of, the edge has got trees, but there's nothing much. But he dropped down through the middle of that and out the other side, and I was up on this ridge here.
Okay.
Oop, there it is. That's my mother-in-law there. But he came out right here, and there's nothing there. It's just there's a creek that runs through there, and these are 2 waterways that come down. We sat right up here in between the 2.
And those woods don't look.
It's thin.
15, 20 yards apart, if that.
You got about 5 to 10 yards on each side, just depending on how it flows.
It flows throughout
that. But it's brushy.
Yeah. So it's got tall.
Well, and that creek's about 10 feet below the field.
So that's why he likes it.
Too. Yeah. But yeah, he just came through there, and I missed.
He said, "Yeah, I missed."
But it was one of those days.
It
was like, man, I want to use my grandpa's old gun. I sighted it in, and I hunted it with that, that gun that season. It had one of them. It was an old Simmons or a Tasco or one of the old scopes on it, and I had it sighted in. It was shooting fine, but I'm guessing I knocked it somewhere. But I did
that last year on that Voldemort buck. I shot and hit. I could see it. I hit way high, way high. I put it right on his heart. That's where when I'm gunning,
Yeah.
I put it on his heart. If he drops a little or whatever, I mean, it just helps. But I hit him in the top of his shoulder, like in no man's land, and he dropped right to the ground because it took the wind out of him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I shucked another one out, and I put it. I could tell, I just put it lower, and I pulled the trigger, and then I hit him in the lungs, and he ran 40 yards.
Yeah. Now this guy here. Well, before I jump back on him, so that buck I missed.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at is we'd sit there from 12:30 until, I mean, that was probably 10 minutes before dark. He came out and he was moving. I mean, he made some track. 300 yards in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and that's okay. So you were
Not
talking
a
about
single other deer.
right,
That was just him.
and here's the thing with that though. We were just talking about that. Them bucks, literally, these guys that are, I find more interest anymore in finding out how to curate my does to do what I want them to do than I do my bucks. Bucks, I just feel like a buck's gonna do what he's gonna do. And then when he's sitting in those little draws like that, I know you've heard stories from him here in Missouri, at least north of Missouri. Man, that buck came out of the smallest draw I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Oh, do I have a story about that from when I was in high school?
I'm just telling you, like, it seems like if you could get to a spot where you know that them does are going to be, hunt it at the rut, great. I'm all for it. But try to curate that situation where the does don't leave that area. Because then you leave, if you create an area where your does are happy, you could have a 50-acre farm.
Oh,
and have all your does in 3 acres of it.
Yeah, so I run trail cameras, but basically that's just a hobby. That's just
right,
like,
right.
Cool, look at that deer.
Yeah, mine is just research, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to have a giant to be able to show your friends,
and that gives you an idea where they're at and whatever. But I don't run enough cameras to really like, okay, I can hone in on this deer. I know exactly where he's going to be bedding. But for me, it's like, okay, where's my does going to be? Where are they at? Because if I'm wanting a buck, I hunt the does.
You have to.
Especially during the rut.
During the rut, for me, I do, yes. Yep. I'd say 3 weeks of November, I focus in on doe movement for bucks.
Absolutely.
But the rest of the year, I'm trying to make that spot for them does on that 100-acre farm within 10 acres of that farm being used by nothing but does.
Yep.
And I've seen it because of the program that was with, what do they call that, CRP.
Oh, yeah, and that's paying really well right now.
There's a huge CRP field next to this property. I watched 42 does. 42 does like a train.
Oh, I believe it.
Come right out of that and into our
stuff.
cornfield. 42. I was just like, oh my goodness, they keep coming.
So,
but it was centralized. And that's when it clicked in light bulb for me, like you were saying with that, trying to figure out that doe. My light bulb went off. I'm like, dude, they are all right there.
Yep. So I got lucky a couple years ago and I picked up a 110-acre farm. And this was when I used to be a police officer for who doesn't know me, but I'd helped a kid. He got in a wreck, and I knew his parents pretty well, but I didn't really know him too well. And he knew I hunted. And he's like, hey, man, I appreciate it. And I wasn't on duty at the time, but he like ran off in a ditch, and I pulled him out or whatever. He's like, hey, you hunt and stuff, don't you? I'm like, yeah. I was like, well, we got a farm up, about 15 miles west of here. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, what is it? And he's like, well, it's all CRP. I'm like, doing light bulb went off. Because at that point, I didn't have any CRP to hunt. And then
it's insane.
I was like, really? I said, well, you mind telling me where it's at? He said, yeah. Tomorrow I'll meet up with you and I'll just take you out there and we can go show it. Dude, I get out there and it's some of the nastiest, thickest CRP that's surrounded by timber it's like a peninsula and a river around it.
Dude, don't even get me started on peninsulas. It is my absolute dream to have a peninsula farm because they produce, in my opinion, the best deer.
So
I don't think you'll find a better spot. Dude, seriously, peninsulas are.
Yeah.
That's where big bucks get killed. And it's funny that you say the peninsula thing because it's not just river bottoms.
No,
it's lake peninsulas. I mean, the boys from the THP guys did it last year. The dudes from there's so many people they're honing in on that.
And if you can find a pinch point, which I was able to, so we were sitting there and he's like, "Well, you want to go walk through it?" I was like, "No, I do not want to walk through this farm right now. We are 2 weeks before gun season.
Yeah."
I just want to sit up here on this high spot. I mean, so it's high up top on the north end, and it just drops straight down to the river.
And that's all CRP going down to the river.
So you can get up there and see. So I broke out the spotting scope, and I got in a bed on my pickup, and I'm just standing there, and I'm watching. And I let him use my binoculars. Dude, I'm not kidding you. The very first day I went out there and I was counting deer, we were over 100.
I don't doubt it.
In 100-acre patch.
I do not doubt it.
So I ended up hunting it. I didn't get to hunt opening weekend there because he's got one guy that hunts opening weekend. He killed like a 155-inch 9-pointer. I mean, it was gnarly.
Nice.
Out of his...
Dude, 150-inch deer, guys. it's hard to even get a 4.5-year-old to that because of everything that goes around with us with neighbors, and we were talking about earlier neighbors, man. That's one of the biggest things. I'm blessed in that sense, and that's why I always tell people, talk to your neighbors. Please talk to your neighbors. Go out there and get on the same page, dude.
Yep.
Because then you both can hunt 160. Who wants to hunt 140? I mean, don't get me wrong. This sounds really selfish when I say it that way. Who wants to hunt 140s the rest of their life?
Yep.
But when you get to like when me and you, when we talked at Farm and Hunt that one time, I was like, dude, it's when you said, man, I'm kind of tired of hunting 140 inchers, and I looked at you for a minute like, that's a terrible problem to have, Dakota. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, that's a horrible problem. But then a light bulb clicked, and I'm like, but he's right though, like.
I've killed a bunch of them.
You get to that class, and it's age, and it's history, and it's a lot of things. But being able to do that for you and your neighbors, at least in 1,000-yard or 1,000-acre radius.
Yep.
Dude, they're producing some giants doing that, and everybody's
for
happy.
me. It's
in
just
that sense.
discipline. I don't have the discipline not to shoot them.
Dude, and I don't care what gets your heart. When we joke about the whole 140-inch thing, it's we're neither one of us is going to pass a 140-inch buck probably in the woods.
For me anymore,
if he's got the age.
For me anymore, it's about the hunt, not particularly the deer.
Yeah.
If it's like something crazy happened with that hunt or something that's going to be super memorable, like that's it. I mean, kind of like this deer up here.
Yeah.
After I shot him, I was kind of not disappointed, but I was like, "Oh man, if he waited a year, everybody." That's a famous line anymore.
Yeah.
If I had one more year.
One more year.
But I mean, he's not real wide, but he's got so. I mean.
Yeah, I'll take him down here in a second. Let you guys see him.
I mean,
He's 6, true 8 on each side. And and you were saying, with that CRP field and everything that goes down into that funnel. How many farms have you think you've hunted that are completely different terrain in the same area?
One, every single farm I've got is different. Like the farm I live on, it's wide open crop fields with finger draws. The farm that I've honed in on the last 3 years, I mean, it's got good timber. It's all, not crop on it at all. It's pasture ground. And then the CRP, it's CRP and timber on a river bottom. It's pretty, and you got to hunt them all differently.
Yeah, and like you were saying with that. Well, that CRP going down into, so the CRP was going down into a peninsula, is what you're saying? Yeah, dude, that's crazy. You imagine if there would have been a 10-acre clover plot before the peninsula.
So they've given me permission. I can do that because it's not in the CRP program anymore. It was an investment buy is basically what it is. Somebody needed to write off some taxes.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So they needed to buy that. Said needed to, but it's a pretty cool little setup how it is. I'm trying to find it on here, and I'll show you. This is a little secret honey hole. So,
what's I saying? You can draw it out on there real quick of how that layout. That's, because that's kind of what I run into all the time. People don't want to show the land that they're hunting for poaching, which I get. And there are crappy people out there that, ruin it for the rest of us in that sense. But
okay, here it is. I wish there's a way. Is there a way I can turn off like names and stuff? Yeah, there is.
I think you can hide. I think you can hide like names and property boundaries.
You just gotta turn the layers off.
Yeah, I think you can. But like I really do, and anybody that talks to me knows that that's probably my dream. Is I want a good peninsula farm that I can do something on, and because I just think that peninsula provides such a good sanctuary.
Okay, so it's all this.
There we go.
So this is all CRP, all through here, and then this is just a big river bottom.
Here, bring it over here real quick. Okay, so you got here. You can explain it out now.
So this is all CRP right here.
Yep.
And then the river runs right through here and comes back up.
That whole area looks dang near like bedding. Look at the ag field up to the north.
Yeah, so you got ag all up here. So what I did is this is kind of flat up until about like right here, and then it goes straight down.
Okay.
So I set up right here. I mean, it's hard to see a lot like to your this way and this way because it's so
thick, yeah.
But you can see down and you can see back behind you. Well, these deer, I found the trails through this is unbelievable. It's like cattle.
Have you ever? A lot of people are complaining about that with Onyx. Onyx, if you're listening, dude, I think the guys, if there's one comment you guys need to pay attention to, take these photos in the fall. Take the aerials in the fall.
Yeah.
Because you could see that probably from an aerial. If you were to take a drone up there in October,
That's funny
November.
You say that because I did. At that time, I did have a drone, but it has since been
Destroyed. I'm getting the drones this year. That's something I'm gonna really kind of hone in, just because I'm gonna be hunting some public land, and not to go and try to get an edge on these deer, just really because it's hard to scout a lot of the time with having everything that's going on. Like my schedule's booked out till next September.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I didn't get one just because I wanted to do it with this. I loved flying them. A buddy of mine had one. I was like, oh, I got to get one. So I loved flying them and just taking videos and stuff with them. But I utilized what I had, and it was before rifle season, and I'd already tagged out with my bow buck that year.
Yeah.
So I flew it up, and I was like, okay, I can't sneak in here because I don't know the farm. I'm not going to go blowing through here. So I got like as high as FAA would let me.
Right.
Flew over. I couldn't believe some of the trails. So I was able to like coordinate with OnX and that and kind of find some trails to go through there. And it was unreal. It was like spider webs. And
that's what I'm saying. Like, so I watched an episode. Do you watch Midwest Whitetail much?
Yep.
It's probably one of the guys I watch predominantly a lot. Like I watch a lot of their content.
I work with a couple of guys that are on that show.
They're on a show? Cool.
Yeah, Mitch Malaris. He's one of them.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know if Steven's on there. I think Steven Malaris, he's with somebody else.
Gotcha.
He's not with Midwest, but
them dudes do such good homework. They're hard to beat, man, because they're kind of a twist between what them boys do at the hunting public and what some of these big people like Don Higgins does.
Hunting public, they started with
Midwest Whitetail. Well, and the boys that are in Midwest Whitetail now, they took over from Bill Winke.
Yeah.
Which was kind of a shock. I never really thought I'd ever see him leave that, but he explained it himself.
Yeah.
In
So is
an
he
interview.
doing something else, or just kind of taking a step back?
Dude, he's taking a step back. So he's got family up north, from what I understand. I watched an interview with him and I can't think of the guy's name from Midwest Whitetail. Jared.
Yeah.
Jared Mills. I watched an interview with them too, and he was talking about that. He said, I got to a point where I was killing big bucks, but it became such a hassle that bringing the content and doing those things, not that he didn't love doing it because he loved doing it. He said, but it took away from his hunting. It wasn't as enjoyable because he was trying to always be a performer. Yeah. And, and then you got guys like Jared Mills who literally says, my favorite aspect of hunting is the footage.
Yep.
Is the content. So he's somebody that needs dude, there's nobody, in my opinion, there's nobody better as far as content.
Years, like when I first started watching Midwest, it was when Jared and what's the other guy's name that hunts with Jared? They've got that river
Jared
farm.
Mills, and he's a doctor, believe it or not. He's a ear, nose, and throat doctor, which I didn't know that about him. I heard it in a podcast.
Anyway, when they were hunting,
that guy's name?
They were hunting Merino.
Yeah.
Dude, I followed that for a year, like 2-3 years until they finally got him.
7.5 or 8.5-year-old buck when he was killed. They actually, if you haven't seen it, they
got him. Yeah.
They did a whole backup on that whole journey.
I watched the entire
thing. And it's
thing.
super cool.
Yep.
Super cool.
So that's really what got me in on the Midwest stuff. Of course, I'd watched it a few times when Bill was really picking it up, and but yeah, Jared and that.
My favorite to watch, if I were to say I had a favorite to watch of all the hunting shows out there, obviously I'm going to have to stay with them THP boys, the hunting public boys.
Yeah, well,
their content is it's just like, it's so immersive. Like, there's a difference for me. It's like I watch the guys from the hunting public, and they're so immersive in what you're doing. It's almost like you're hunting with them. Mm-hmm. Like if you're, as if you were in a stand next to them, And then the Midwest Whitetail guys, not saying that they aren't as immersive, but they're not there flipping from a GoPro that's attached to their forehead, crawling through 4-foot tall switchgrass, shooting a deer that's a giant in New Mexico. You know what I mean? Like that. So hats off to those boys that do that, because that is a hard lifestyle. Everything that they do, bringing content 2-3 days. Mm-hmm. All 70, 80 episodes in a season. Like, dude, that's insane. That's insane.
You probably never guess what my favorite hunting show is.
Probably not. What is it?
Randy Newberg.
Okay, no, I can get on that. I can get on Randy. I can get on that.
Yeah, I love whitetail hunting. Yeah. So I started out, turkey hunting was my thing, in high school and
I think all of our thing was turkey hunting in high school.
Oh man, dude, turkey hunting
I still
killer.
Dude.
It's nothing like it used to be.
No.
But
I tell people to come turkey hunting, and I tell them all the stories of growing up. It's like they don't even believe me. I'm like, you just had to be there, man.
So it was nothing like you kill one opening day. And then
dude, I triple birded at Blackhawk, the most hunted piece of public in Marion County.
Yep.
I triple birded there with Cole Jones and a buddy that never hunted before, never hunted a day in his life, and we triple birded within like 30 minutes of sitting in there.
I believe it.
Now it's like you might get a bird on there that's chased by 20 people.
Like Missouri now, they give you 2 tags. you know, like always. But if I kill a bird, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't even try and go after a second one.
No. I go to calling birds at that point. I try to get somebody else a bird. Like this year I was lucky. I actually got it up as like the first episode. It's slightly rough, guys. But it was the first episode that I've ever done for, you know, Ridge Ghost stuff. I mean, it's in high quality and it's freaking sweet. Like I was literally 7 yards from a bird fanning out all the way around me. I mean, he was all the way around me. Came in from behind. Opening morning, I wasn't in my spot 37. I was 37 minutes from the time I sat in my spot until that bird was down in the field.
Those are the good ones.
Those are the good ones. And now, see, there was 2 other birds in that area, which is something on that farm that I've really honed in on, is turkeys. And it's honestly, if I can say anything that's come down to it, it's literally been controlled burns. You know, having a controlled burn and bringing in those areas where them pullets and then others feel safe and they can see, because they come in and they pick everything out. You do a controlled burn, they'll pick every piece of grub off that ground.
Yeah.
And another thing is, you know, pressure doesn't seem to really bother them, at least on my farm.
I killed him on. The turkeys are hard to kill.
Dude,
it's cutthroat out there.
I've got hens, dude. I've got a hen that I waved at. I've got it on footage. I waved at this hen because she would not stop pecking a decoy that I had. Like out in front of me. She was literally just pecking a decoy, walking around her, pecking her like, what is this thing, you know?
Yep.
And I'm like, hey. And it's literally, she turned and looked at me for a minute like, what the heck is that? Any other turkey would have been gone.
Yep.
I got within 4 foot of her, because I know it's her, because she's always in this little bottom, or little like bowl that we have. And I was walking with the girls changing a trail cam yesterday. I got 4 foot. She flew up, scared the crap out of me and her. 3 little pullets flying with her.
Oh, yeah.
I could not believe
like
how they hunkered down let me get that close.
You get a covey quail jump up and make you piss yourself.
Yeah.
Same thing with a turkey on a nest.
Yep. And she, and you know, like I counted 20, I can't remember, 20 something pullets with 3 hens all walking together. So turkey on the farm that I'm hunting now, I'm very, very blessed. But it's been a lot of work to get those turkeys there.
Yep.
It's letting a lot of native grass grow up in areas that are areas that would be good for, you know, putting a food plot or a buck nest in. And I think some of that's starting to kind of kill that turkey population as well. You can curate a property, but you can't curate it too much because you got to think about everything else that's using it.
Yeah, I need to have you come out to this farm where I killed him, and I've got an area that I think you say buck nest. This
yes.
is a cedar
I hunt
thicket.
a lot of buck nest.
It's a cedar thicket that's been cleared, and now it's just grown up. But it's still.
Are the cedars still there? All the big cedars, or you talking?
The piles are still there. But it's
interesting you say piles of cedars. I've seen those piles like that turned into some insane hunting spots.
So what I want to do is I want to go and I want to plant basically a barrier.
Do like a switchgrass or something that's tall?
Something. I don't see that. My thing is I want to do something that's native. I don't want anything that's non-native in there because that stuff just takes over. And
it will. It can take a whole. It can do a lot of damage if need be.
But this area, dude, first picture I got of this buck is right there. We're in this spot.
I've got a buck that's hitting a spot kind of similar. It looks like an old field that, I mean, it's grown up now. It's trashy in there now as far as, you know, cover. But cover is hard. That's a hard game, dude.
Yeah.
Because it's everything. I mean, realistically, if you want to shoot big bucks, guys, like, look at anybody that's doing it. Yes. Seclusion. And access. Like, and access is something I didn't really necessarily pay attention to a lot, probably up until about 5 years ago. And my uncle up in Michigan was, you know, man, if you're not doing, you know, I didn't think he was crazy, but when he was talking about putting in little bridges that go over spots on creek beds just to be able to get into the back of an area, I'm like, why would you do that?
Yep.
And then I started seeing all the deer that he's killing off of it, 140-inch, 150-inch, 160-inch deer in southern Michigan. I'm like, okay, there's really a lot to access.
Something to this idea.
And you talk about that cover. Look at the guys from the Midwest Whitetail. All of them dudes. Oh, Corey just said Mike. Speaking of Midwest Whitetail, Mike is the other guy that hunts with him. Mike and Jared.
I almost said it, but
Mike Reed, I believe his last name's Reed, I believe. But Thanks, Corey, for the assist on that one.
There we
I
go.
was
There we go.
but yeah,
He's the MVP today.
yes,
getting
he
this
is.
stuff
He's
lined
always
up.
my MVP. He's definitely my biggest fan, I believe. But and I appreciate him for that because he makes me stay
You need to
straight.
get him on here. He's killed some giants.
He did. He's there's a whole segment of him. He was the second person that came on
Oh,
the show.
yeah.
You gotta go see it because we
Yeah.
talked a lot about these transitions from doe beds, from ridge to doe bed, and even ridge to field edge. So and creating, you don't have to curate a property a ton, and that's like the most misconstrued thing I think that gets in people's heads. Oh, I got to go in there and I got to plant, all this, and you can do that if you have the money for one, but you have to have the money to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one-time deal. It's an every 2-3 year deal if you're going to do something in that sense. So I tell a lot of guys that are trying to do these little pools or these pockets that are trying to create, like you're saying, do just a regular throw and grow, something that goes in there, that it gives you a mixture of something. And you got to do it away from an area that does her, because a doe will completely destroy a turnip field, and her and all of her friends in the next month going up to that, unless you're going to put in, electric fences and things like that, which most people don't, because they don't have time, and two, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Trust me, I've got horses, and moving fence sucks.
Yes. And you can create those environments. I'm not even saying you can't, but you can also hurt those environments. I mean, like, it really is a fine line of what to get away with. And I always tell people, it's like, and I'm not a land management expert. All I can say is you've seen the trail pics from what I've done with certain farms, and there's some giants running around in those areas.
So I tried when my wife and I first got together, and we got that farm that we live on that I got to hunt, and I was like all gung ho. I'm like, plant food plots. I'm going to go do this and that and this and that. Turn around, and it bit me in the butt.
Yep.
And I was like, man, well, that didn't work out at all. And I spent all kinds of money, and I was like, I didn't even shoot a deer this year. Like, they're gone.
Right.
Well, I think what it is I was going in there too much. So now, cell cameras are great, but I've only got one, and I use it on the furthest damn farm I've got to hunt that I can't get to once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's just I set out there and I go. But now it's like I go into this farm here as little as possible.
Yeah.
And I set my cameras in spots that are easy to get to, because it's just like, for me, it's just like, okay, what's here? I don't really care if I get a ton of pictures, but it's just going to let me know.
Inventory, yeah. What's moving through?
Yeah, and I set it like on edges, because like my farm that I'm hunting where I got him, it's not the best farm in the area. The best farm in the area is right across the gravel road that has not been hunted for 60 years.
Yeah, I'm on a property like that right now. I've literally just got...
I have begged
Wait till you
guy.
see this property that I'm going to show you when we're done with this. You're going to be like, there could be a 200 in there. Like, it hasn't been hunted.
I know
in
there's a 200 in this one. I've seen him.
No joke.
I have begged this old man to let me hunt. He's like, well, he said, I'd let you, but I don't know if my brother is going to let you. And I was like, well,
who's your brother?
What do I got to do? And he's gave me some stipulations that I don't know are so legal, because he's had some predators and domestic predators tearing into his livestock. He said, you get rid of them, you can hunt it. I was like, I'm not into that.
Right.
But it's just like,
yeah, them backdoor deals can get real
I
sketch
was
real
like,
quick.
no way in hell. Like, I've got a conscience. I can't do that. But he's got the CRP field back again. We're at CRP, and it's right across from an ag field. I'm on the north edge of that ag field with my pasture field and timber. And dude, I'm telling you, it's 2 or 3 times a year.
How big do you think these CRP fields need to be? That's something that I'm having an issue with.
Not big.
The
one that I'm seeing that I saw is 200-inch buck, and I got a buddy from Montana that he came down and hunted with me a couple years ago, and he saw him too. We were driving in at like, I don't know, we came in for an afternoon hunt. It was probably 1 o'clock, and there he was, 50 yards off the road with a couple of does. And
just going towards that CRP.
He was in it.
He was in it already.
You can see it. So there's some cedars that are probably 5 to 6 foot tall, scattered throughout this, and the rest of it's all CRP. And you can see, and they're pretty decent because how the road sets, you're kind of up above
high.
it. And I just happened to look over, and I slowed down, and I stopped the truck, and I was like, hey, JJ, that's his name, his nickname. I was like, look over there. He's like, can we hunt that? I was like, unfortunately, no, we can't. But the farm that we're going to is just 500 yards up here on the right. He's headed that way, and it's a very good opportunity or chance that he's going to be coming across. So,
question real quick on that farm. So, do you think he's ever spending any time on the farm that you're on?
No.
You don't think so?
So, when I first saw him, I saw him, let's see, 2018.
So, where's the ag located?
right across from the CRP, right across the gravel.
On the opposite side or on your side?
My side.
Okay, so the ag is on your side, so he's just bouncing back and forth.
Yeah. So I don't think he's making it to me
Well,
north.
if he's an old buck, he's not gonna.
Well,
Like, I don't think they travel. I really don't think the old bucks travel as much as people say they do.
Oh no! So their home ranges, they get a lot.
I know
smaller.
the home
think that's
range
why I was
shrinks.
able to hone in on this guy because 2018 he was a roamer.
Right.
2018, 19 he roamed. We were getting my buddy was getting more pictures of him than I was. But then 2020, I only got 3 pictures of him, but they're all on the same camera.
So what do you think that he was? 5.5-year-old deal, maybe?
I'm gonna put him at 6.
6?
I
Okay.
think he was 6.5. Because he's slightly smaller here than he was in 19.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think he's kind of going a little bit downhill, and he was actually he's got the 6 side over here. When I gutted him, he was actually missing a testicle. He only had one.
No joke.
So he had flip-flop sides.
That's kind of a thing. Like you have that like a kind of a wild genetic that with those,
you've seen
those
some pictures.
8s, and I wonder if that's like, I don't know. That's such an odd.
So out there at that farm, you either have your wide 8s with one side that flares up. I've got 3 of them.
Yeah, I see. They're all part of the same family.
Dude, that's my weakness. Big 8s are my weakness. I cannot not shoot them.
Big 8s are like the hardest to
especially with
score.
my bow. I can't pass a good 8 with my bow up.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I love them. I love the way they look. It's hard to get a big 8, to score well.
It really is hard to get a real framey, good tine height, good mass.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to grow a good number of years,
So
and
you
it's
either have that genetic or you've got the gnarly non-typical. So I'm going to show you a picture right now.
heck yeah.
I may have showed you this before. I don't know.
I don't know.
But they get stupid like this deer here. And this guy right here is like in between the 2. So here's my dad's buck. That's kind of like a gnarly. It's got the split mane. He killed that out there.
Yeah, I got one just doing a split like that
Yeah.
off the main right now.
Or you got him.
Yeah, that's intense.
And he was a young deer. I thought he was a lot older than what he was.
I mean, he looks, just because of how thick he is,
Well,
his frame
yeah.
type and everything just looks real big and gnarly. Like, and that's
Even
kind of
his
something
his
that's
mass was so big.
yeah,
So I was like, man, that's got to be 4.5, 5.5-year-old deer.
right.
He might have been pushing that 4.5, but I'm not totally convinced. I didn't get the jaw work done on him or anything, but
You seen that one that I shot last year, that real chocolate racked Voldemort buck. He was 5.5-year-old deer, and I kind of pegged him right around there. I'd had 2 years of history, or a little over 2 years of history with that deer, and I'd had him under my stand a couple different times, a couple of years prior, and he was like that though. He was just like a real. I mean, I've got that weird genetic where triple brow tines are a big thing on the farm that I hunt, and then you hear guys that have a property for 15 years, and I'm just throwing out a number, 15 years. And that first 5 years, they got this type of genetic, and then 5 years down the road, they have all these smaller buck genetics, and then so they sell that farm off, or they try to upgrade to another. I really don't think I think a lot of it, we need to pay attention more to what these does are doing. Like they grow their racks, they grow the potential of what they're going to be inside the womb.
mm-hmm.
You've got champion line does when you go to different breeders, and that's all they talk about.
Oh yeah, I've got a buddy that I used to work with. He actually lives in Macon, Missouri. When I used to work for Chester Ross, him and his dad, they grow deer. They've got
Right.
some, and dude, they've got some gnarly ones. Well, I was kind of talking to him. We had a rain out day, and I knew that they did that, and I had never got a chance to talk to him. I was like, "What's the key?" He said, "I don't care what buck you've got. The genetics are in the does."
They're in it.
And I was like, well, how do they get him so big, in the fenced-in world and stuff? He's, well, they do what's called line breeding. And I don't know if you're familiar with what that is. So basically what they'll do is they'll take the dad to the daughter at one time.
Really?
Yeah. And it's common in, like, livestock world, too. You can do it one time. but dad can't do granddaughter. It's weird.
That's odd. I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
Well, now
so-
I know.
Yeah,
Like,
so not some guys don't do that, and he said that they didn't do it often.
right.
When they were trying to throw something like those stupid, crazy, gnarly racks and stuff.
And,
But,
and I think all that's cool. You know, like there's definitely I guess a lane for it, if you will, because it's just like anything that you go car shows,
yeah.
anything
I mean,
deer
it's
shows.
it's to each their own. If they want to go pay
Yep.
10, 15 grand to go
Yep.
shoot a 200
I have
deer.
nothing against it. I got nothing
It's not
against
my
it.
thing.
It's not me. Yeah, it's not my thing. I got nothing against
Yep.
it. Cool. If you ain't got time to scout and buy property and do that, and you got 15 grand to throw around, go for it. Like,
Yep.
I don't care.
That's all you.
But I really do. I talk to so many guys that are like, man, you know, this buck's genetics, and every time I hear him say that, I'm just like, I mean, it could be him. You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask
But
you this question.
I think does are so important. Like, they're just so important to what we do as hunters.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. It's something that I've been kind of tossing around the last year or two. You know, turkey populations are going to
They're
shit.
dwindling. They're dwindling. Bad.
You know, and I can't remember the last time. I don't even think I've never shot a hen.
I don't know if I think at the last time that I even shot at a hen it was fall. And you know how that is when you're in a bow stand.
Yeah.
You always try to take a poke
Yeah.
at one in a bow stand, but like it never happens.
Never works
You
out.
know what I mean?
But-
They're just too
So you
good.
think about it, like we're trying to manage these turkeys, so you don't shoot the hens.
Yeah,
Not-
I mean,
it's not a common practice in my opinion. Not a lot of guys.
I don't think it's very smart to try to play God in that sense.
Yep.
If you really want my honesty, and I'm probably one of the more diehard turkey hunters that are still trying to get out there and have fun with it.
Yep.
I know, and it's because of the population. And I'm not saying you're wrong, because obviously, you know, when you have turkeys, you really you gotta have females in order
Mhm.
to produce. But is that a
Yep.
cause? Is it, you know, you look at Michigan, okay, a perfect example as far as what you're saying with the turkey population, with all the hens that we don't shoot. You go up to Michigan, dude, the buck doe ratio up there in southern Michigan is insane. Like, it's one. I bet you I don't know what it is, and I'm not trying to bash it. I'm trying to bash that area, but I bet you it's 1 to 20 or more.
Yeah, and
Or more. It might even be more than that. I don't know.
I remember when
But
Missouri
genetics took a drop then.
Yeah, I remember when the Missouri Department of Conservation came in. Remember when you used to buy as many doe tags as you wanted?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. They're trying to get that buck to doe ratio back down. I think they were saying it was like 10 to 1 or what, something. They needed to be
Yeah.
like 3 to 4 to 1. I'm
Here's
not
the thing,
saying
though.
it,
Why does that matter, though? I really want to know why. I mean, like, if there is knowledge on that from somebody, you know, I really want to know where some of these stigmas have came. I think
Yeah.
it literally
Where's it-
somebody thinks an idea,
somebody
they
hell of a
roll
lot
with it.
smarter knows
Well,
something
yeah,
more
a deer
than me.
biologist. You know what I mean? Like I talked to a really good biologist that manages Deer Ridge, and if you've never hunted Deer Ridge, or if you have, it's freaking awesome. It's a great place. It's
I
probably my
did a lot
favorite.
of camping and fishing up there. I can't say. I think I've turkey hunted a few times. Yeah, I have turkey hunted, but I've never deer hunted up
It's amazing. It's really good hunting all the way around, all over. It's managed really well. They brought a guy from Iowa, Land of Giants, you know, and now he's down here doing stuff. And in that first year, I'm not going to tell y'all where we did it on Deer Ridge, but we had some deer that Chad shot one 148 inches
It's a good
on
one.
public, and I wasn't even the buck we were after in there. So, and there was one noticeably bigger than him in there.
Yeah, I've seen
and-
some big ones up there.
And it's
While
and it's
fishing
because
and
of that
stuff.
guy though. Like, and that's where I really kind of he kind of got my brain going a bunch when he started talking about how important does are. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean by why are they so important? You know, and I know because, you know, that's where the genetics are made. That's, you know, that's how like an area with does, if you centralize it or make it in an area, you can have fringe spots on your property.
Mhm.
Like, everything just points back to that doe. You know what I mean? And on a standpoint of where do you get genetics, or how do you get genetics on your farm to get bigger? You could, like you said, you could plant all the food, you could put all the habitat in there for them, you could do all that. But if you ain't got the right does, it don't matter. It really doesn't matter. You know, there's guys that go, man, I've had a 13-year stretch. I shot a 200-inch back in 1990, and then I haven't shot another one on that same farm for 13 years. Okay, that means you just didn't have the right doe on there. And that just proves that point for me. Like what the buck doesn't matter.
Well, and if 200-inch deer is not common, or else everybody would be shooting.
No,
them,
no. The doe's producing that.
It's hard to get up over 160, over 170. Those deer they're.
Dude, 150 is a good deer.
Yeah.
Like if I could shoot 150s the rest of my life, dude, that'd be awesome. Like I would be fine with that.
I can tell you one thing that I do think that was key to getting a lot of these bigger bucks here in Missouri is when they did that point restriction.
Point restriction is a must.
I think that has done more good than anything else that they've decided to do for the deer herd.
Yes, that's okay. So that's what I'm getting. I'm not trying to bash these deer programs.
No.
Like I know it sounds like I am.
The intentions are always good.
Yes, I believe when I say don't play God, I mean like don't go in there and change everything. And a perfect example of that, and I say this all the time, and they're probably tired of hearing me say it, is Honeywell.
I've heard some horror stories.
Dude, that place, you could not, if you didn't walk out with a turkey in that place, come on. You were wearing bright orange in the middle of the spring is what you were doing. Yep. And even then, you probably could have smacked one in there. You know what I mean? Like it was such a good, he came off of Honeywell, this bird here. And he's real good bird. And
who did that bird for you?
Furs and Feathers here in town. He did really good work. I was really surprised. I was really happy with that mount. I need to dust him off because he's a little dusty. But I look at that. We talk about the females are so. I just think the females and that's where our research needs to go on both turkeys and deer, dude.
Yep.
Like the point, like you said, the point restriction covered. That is literally, in my opinion, the only thing we have to worry about with those bucks to get them bigger. That's it.
Yep.
And it's just 4 on one side. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that a deer's mature age is, he's not going to start growing 4 points typically.
Yeah.
I've seen 2.5-year-olds. I've produced 2.5-year-olds on different farms that have done crazy stuff. I've got a 3.5-year-old that I'm going to show you a picture of that you're not going to believe he's 3.5, but I'm pretty positive he is.
Yeah. So
it's like that point restriction, like you talked about, that is me personally. I think that was the best thing that they have done.
We're like year 8 of that, 7. Maybe it's been longer than that.
It's been longer than that. I think it's been going on 10, close to 10, because it's 22. Yeah. I want to say before I went into the military, there was a point restriction, and that's been.
You graduated 08.
08, yeah.
Because right around then is when they started those talks about that stuff.
I think it was right around 2010, 2011. I want to say. Right around the same time I went in. But like you say that though, and we talk about, people that do that on their own personal farms. I hear it all the time, that talk about don't shoot that 3.5-year-old buck. And not everybody's game. I'm not saying everybody's game has to be shoot a big buck. You know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
You get 100 inches gets you excited. Dude, awesome. Cool.
One thing, so I am a trophy's a trophy, whatever you think it is. Yep. One thing that bugs me, and I'm not going to say any names, but I've got a guy that hunts close to where I hunt. He's not I'm not going to say he's like a hardcore hunter or anything. He's a weekend guy.
Yeah.
But he's always talking deer management to me every time I see him. But I showed you that picture of that headshot buck.
Mm-hmm. Oh, see, yeah. No, that's not deer management. Like, that was not deer management. That deer...
You know how many deer they shot that night between him and his wife? They filled every tag they had.
In one evening.
I'm gonna say they missed
to
more
each
than
their
they hit.
to each their own.
Well, and it's just frustrating. Like, don't talk it if you're not gonna back it up.
And we talk about that all the time on this show. Is get with your neighbors, get on a plan together.
He's the only one that's not like on
the
board.
plan.
Yeah.
And eventually it'll start. And those deer will mark that spot. Like, I don't care what you are, deer will mark a spot that they do not like.
So the best spot in that
He'll
area
seclude himself.
The best part is there across the gravel. The second best part is the one he hunts.
Right.
And then you've got everything else is kind of like the same. It's good, mediocre. Like, I say mediocre, it's good hunting. I mean, it's really good hunting. But and I'm not trying to bitch, but yeah, I just wish he'd get on board and listen to us.
And it's not even, and you're not going to get everybody. I've dealt with that for a long time, of people who are, like you said, pain in the butt, really. And I get it.
I mentioned earlier, like, man, I'm probably going to have to give that farm a couple of years to get back to the quality that
you were talking about that, yeah.
But and he's kind of part of the reason, I mean, I think.
Well, when you shoot 3.5-year-olds, they're not 5.5.
Between him, his wife, and they lease it. And I don't know the lease agreements, like who he can have up there and who he can't. Like, it's none of my business. But I know
Right.
he leases it because there's a sign like, "Here's the management company if you want to lease this property." Yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And bam,
Yeah.
he's the one that got it. But it's him, his wife, a daughter. I think he had some guys from like Louisiana or some stuff, because I saw some Louisiana license plates there.
Like Louisiana State?
Yes.
That's really weird you say that, because I've ran into quite a few Louisiana people this year.
Yeah.
On public, like quite a few.
Yeah. So right after season, I talked to him, and he's like, "Hey, did you do any good?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't shoot rifle buck. I was in Colorado elk hunting this year, so I didn't even rifle hunt this year here." He's like, "Oh, okay. Well," I was like, "How'd you guys do?" And he's like, "Oh, we shot 17 deer this year." I was like, "What?
17 deer?
17
And
deer.
during
Rifle season?"
just during rifle season.
I'm like, "Holy cow!" And then the neighbor across the road, they're like, "Yeah, we shot 13." I was like,
That's 30 deer. And
10 days, 11 days. I was like, "What did you?"
Jeez
Like, so I
Louise.
was like, after that, and then I went ahead and, like, normally I pull my cameras out and kind of let things calm back down. I kept them up. I was like, I'm gonna try and do some inventory here. I promise you, between the end of rifle season, I didn't even bow hunt. I say I did. I did a little bit, but not super hard.
yeah, not didn't dive.
Because that Colorado trip was tough on old Dakota.
Dude, I don't care what people say, the elk hunting, dude.
Well, we were thinking, third season
Hardcore.
rifle November up in Colorado. You're thinking they're going to be, coming down the mountain stuff. Heck no, we didn't find elk until we were at 12,000 feet. And it was like,
Good night.
Yeah, I mean, we had to go all the way up there. But anyway, I ran them cameras all the way through like the end of February until they started, the smaller bucks I did have a camera dropped. I probably didn't get 100 pictures out of 10 cameras in that
Really?
month and a half to 2 months.
That's
I
insane.
I think they just said, screw this place.
Yeah.
But I've been.
Well, I mean, and here's the thing: when you're shooting, and this is something I try to tell all kinds of guys that your doe management. You always have that week where you go in and you try to knock out a few does. Great. And I don't know if there's any signs to it. Just try it if you want, guys. I don't, take all the info that's brought to you on this podcast as your own. That's what podcast is for. Things that you're going to use and things that you won't use, or things you're scared of using. But more often than not, trying something works out at least one way or the other, and it gives you a definitive answer on what you should or shouldn't do. And the last 2 years, just on that property, I've been shooting does that range, and this is just a guesstimation on age. I'm not saying that I'm some deer expert and I know what age, how to look at a body of a deer and go, oh, that's a 2.5-year-old, But I've tended to leave one nanny or two nannies that I notice on that farm, and it's usually the ones that don't care the most. Like if it's a nanny that's a 4.5-year-old and she's stomping and blowing, she's toast. Like I'm knocking her out the gate early season.
That's some red arrow stuff right there.
Yeah, and I'm telling you though, that's the truth though.
Yep.
And the 2.5s, if I see a couple of those 2.5, 3.5s, I'm shooting one or two of those because they're rambunctious.
Yep.
Not that they're looking at you and blowing you up, but they're rambunctious and they're making it uncomfortable for bigger bucks to be in there. So I leave. And on the farm, I've got a pretty decent inventory because of mineral licks and stuff like that about what does live on there throughout the whole season and what year. And we have a doe that produces twins. She's produced twins the last 3 years in a row. And it's I'm assuming it's her. Everybody's like, well, how are you going to tell if it's a doe if it's her? I'm like, she's done the same pattern.
Yeah.
You can look at one doe and go, that doe does the same thing every day.
Well, I've got a doe out there that I've been watching for a couple of years now, and she's got the double throat patch, and then she's got got white socks on the back. So it's like, oh, you're very obvious. Well, this year, and I have a video of it somewhere. I was trying to look for it earlier. I couldn't find it, but she had twins this year. It was, I guess, last year. She had twins, and one of them was a button buck, and I know it was a button buck because it was like literally right underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hunting
I find that a lot. Button buck and doe, twins.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's something to that, but I find a lot of that.
Yeah, but the button buck had front socks and a double throat patch. So I was like, So, and then in a farm that I used to be able to hunt, it was our old family farm that we had that we sold it. My grandmother sold it after my grandpa passed. But the same doe, triple button bucks every year.
Really?
Every year I can remember this doe.
And I've seen does do that. Like and with, I don't know if there's something to that. I really don't. With how they breed. We talk about genetics all the time, how it's made in there. Maybe that's something that sticks with the doe. Like I said, everything that my whole aspect on hunting in general changed after I started following more doe activity than buck activity.
I think that was probably like the first kind of like deer management that my dad instilled in me. And, I started hunting, got your hunter safety course when you're 12, 13 years old. And, hey, guess what? You get to hunt by yourself now. So Dad threw me up in a stand. He said, the only deer you can't shoot tonight is that doe with 3 button bucks.
Yep.
And I was like, okay.
And that's another thing. We talk about taking out those does early. I've seen if a doe gets comfortable, and the guys that I pay attention to this, pay attention to this. If a doe gets comfortable in an area, she's not so worried about that young either in that area.
No.
She's not. I've seen it. I've seen does move off of bucks or move off of their fawns as early as October 10th, where I'll watch a small, doe and a button buck come through, and there's no mama there.
Yep.
And so here's my thing with that. I don't know when they start doing that. So if you're talking about having the next generation or the next best thing in your area, as far as your ground that you're trying to curate, go to the doe. Understand that doe. Understand what does need to stay, what does need to go. Understand that if you've got good genetics on a farm and you've had the same 3.5-year-old nanny blowing at you, yeah, she sucks. But if she's producing bucks that big, leave her be.
Yep.
Shoot another doe. Shoot a 2.5-year-old doe. Shoot a 3.5-year-old doe. Bucks don't even, and here's another thing with the does. Bucks, and I've seen this in a field firsthand. So anybody wants to say that they anything other, whatever, I don't care. I've seen it with my own eyes. You're not going to tell me what I didn't see. I've watched nanny does pretty much give themselves up to the chase.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
You know what I mean? Like, if you are a 5.5, 6.5-year-old buck that's already shrinking his home range, and you've got a doe that's just willing to ding near give it up, are you going to travel? No, you're going to breed her first.
Well,
find out where she's at, then hunt her.
Well, and those does too. Like, they're not stupid. They're going to be like, hey, I want the biggest and best genetics.
Yes.
They're going to let that 2-year-old chase her all day long, and she's going to wait until she finds, another buck to run that guy off. And guess what? That tail's going to go up, and she's going to go down for him.
Yeah. And so like I do, people are like, what's your, best hunting strategy? I ask everybody who comes on the show, what's your favorite hunting strategy? And most people say, oh, wind. Well, duh, I get wind. My favorite, I literally like watching early season to watch big does. I love watching big does go into an area and going, I know come November or come late October, that doe is going to produce a buck that's going to come by me and dang near produce a buck that's going to be in either a field, a switchgrass area that I've presented, or, an intersection where there's intersections are probably one of the most important things as far as what I hunt.
Yep.
Because the way that farm breaks up.
Funnels. I do a lot of funnels.
Funnels.
Points.
And that's where you were talking about, where could I improve, I guess. Not really improve, or that's a bad way to say it, improve. Because when you're doing all this management, you're not improving you as a hunter. You're improving your herd capabilities.
I'm just trying, in that particular spot, I just want to be able to improve the habitat to keep him from going to that guy that shoots 17 deer.
Yes, and in order to do that, that's what I was telling you. Find on that farm that you're on. Instead of focusing on where I need to try to keep that buck in his own range, focus on 80% of the property you want to be used by a buck, 20% of it you want to be used by a doe. You get that 20% spot built and you build the perfect habitat for a doe, those big bucks they might be on your fringe, but they're staying in that fringe and they're able to travel a long way on that without being bothered by young, other does, 2.5-year-old rambunctious does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot to it. I've been listening for probably as long as I can remember, and it's the reason I started this podcast was to find out, from everybody that does this as a passion, that lives, breathes, eats this stuff, like for me, hunting's not just a hunt, man. It's my lifestyle.
Yep.
It's food on my family's table. It's bettering an environment. It's bettering a community. It's getting deer a habitat where CWD isn't wrecking havoc. It's doing all those things that make, things that I loved to do as a kid available for my kids. And, that's what the real management is about. And when you get to that point where, you're not like, I get excited when I see a giant. Like, don't get me wrong. Everybody, who doesn't? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But why is he there? And why is he in that spot that time of year? I talked to Charlie Nolan last week about a buck that he killed. And if you've seen it, like I said, that's where dreams are made. You hold that rack, I don't care who you are. I don't even care if you don't even hunt. You're smiling when you hold that rack because it's just that intense. He literally tells you, I find a lot of those spots, or a lot of movement in those areas that are high intensity areas where there's noise there. And that's one thing I'm picking up from everybody: background noise, close to a road, close to a cattle farm, close to side by sides riding. It's stupid.
This deer is right under my nose.
I'm telling you, it's you create those pockets where the does can be completely content and in their own world, and you create it well enough. I promise you, it doesn't matter. You've just made the rest of your farm open for bucks to move in.
Yep. So I'll tell you.
That's why when you get too many food plots in, and you got
Yep.
60 does, you're not going to have giants in there. At least not till the rut. But if you create a property where on, like I said, 20% of it, 10% of it, a cedar thicket, whatever you want to do, that's close to a big ag field, don't even go in it, in my opinion. And that's just from up here in Northeast Missouri that I've noticed over all the years I've been hunting.
Yeah. So this deer, I kind of tell the story on this deer real quick if you want.
No, go for it. That's what we want.
So
I want to know how you honed in on him. You know what I mean? Like,
so let me get this right. 2018's first picture.
Yeah.
One picture. 2019, no pictures of him. So I thought, oh, Romer buck, he's gone, whatever. 2020, I get a really, really bad nighttime picture. You just barely see his rack, and he's walking away, kind of quartering away from the camera. And this is that camera's on the south end of the farm, probably 100 yards off the gravel road in a draw, because I wanted to see what's coming off the best farm in that area.
Right.
I wanted to see if there's anything traveling, and he wasn't big. Like the picture wasn't good enough that I could really get excited about. So I was like, oh man, like yeah, he's got a
could be.
Well, so you could see. So it's about like this to you.
Okay.
Camera's over there. Oops, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
And his head's down like this, and it's foggy.
One of those where it was high
early
moisture, early morning.
You could
cell cams just dog.
Well, and then it's like it's not a flash with the UV. It kind of blurred that whole animal.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, like okay, he's decent. I mean, I can see his rack on both sides of his body, so he's got to be something. And he got decent height on the left side here. I was like, okay, so didn't get too excited. Hadn't really got a good picture of a deer on that particular draw because I didn't hunt. It's so close to the road. Like I don't want to hunt that close to a road. Something I honed in on.
You hear people say that all the time.
Well, so where I parked at normally is like right in the middle of the farm on the western edge.
Okay.
So just pull in, park right next to a barn, and walk in. 90% of the time, I just walk the farm road that cuts through the middle of the farm, and I can either go south or north. Then I've got a couple stands branching off, and I didn't really think, access. Not something that was just the easy way.
Yeah.
You got decent cover.
Wind and access is everything, dude. That's what I've just found out over the years. Wind and access.
Yeah, so I'd always paid attention to the wind. If it was coming out of the south, I'd base my hunt off that. It's coming out north, base off that. If I had an east wind, that was great because I had, it was coming.
Right at your face.
Right at my face as soon as I got out of the truck. So I was like, okay, well, maybe a couple weeks go by, youth season comes. And my son and I built this box blind, get him up because he's legally blind, and it was one of the first times that he's like gung-ho, I want to kill a big buck. I'm like, okay, you got a couple under your belt, buddy, like let's go. Like if you want to wait, you shoot whatever you want to shoot. I'll never limit him to what he wants to shoot until he gets a little older, and then we're like, okay, management time.
You can give him the management bucks, but if your kids are out hunting you, I mean, I don't know if you've seen that buck Corey's son shot last year.
I did.
It makes me giggle so hard, but that makes me laugh so hard. I was like, you realize you done screwed up because that kid's gonna try to gun for every big one you have.
You just run him for life.
Yep.
But no, I mean that was a nice deer, but
157 or something like that. It's big.
Nice. So just walk the top edge of the ridge out in the middle. I say middle. It's not really middle. I mean you got good cover. That deer would have to be in the field to see us.
Okay.
Like a good ways in the field because of how it's set. Because it kind of comes up and then flattens out, and it's kind of like the road sits pretty low down in there, and you can sneak right up in there. And I say never. Very rarely do you blow a deer out going in that way to that box blind. Well, we get up in that box blind, and it was in the morning, dark. Get up, turn the heater on for him, and start cracking windows so you can see out and whatnot. And out of nowhere, right back from where we came, between the truck and me is this draw. And that buck came out of there. This one right here. Came out. I was like, my he's 75 yards from where I parked.
Right.
I was like, are you kidding me? Get Jared on him, and I was like, all right, bud, like if you can see it. And it's a struggle, like to get him to, he's got what's called resting nystagmus. His eyes bounce constantly. They're always moving. So he's really got to have a really good steady
clean
shot. Yep. So, and deer stood there, maybe been 150 yards tops. Shot over. Deer stood there, racked another one in. And of course, me and Dad being so excited, big buck out there. When I racked it back for him, I cut him with his hand.
Oh.
And then that took him a minute to try and get that. I was just like, all right, bud, hey, he's still there. He has not moved. Shot again, he missed. Then he took off.
Yeah.
I was like, man. Well, so that gave me I learned from that. I got some information. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to come in a different way.
Right.
Because I am way too close to this deer from the get-go.
Right.
And this is probably why I've never seen him on the hoof.
Yeah, he's busting you on your access.
Well, and those bucks are not stupid.
Dude, you know how I do public land.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've really dove into public land because I think if you can hunt good on public land, you're going to be able to hunt good just about anywhere. And I really do believe that. You take the Dan Infaults, I could go on and on, the Aaron Warbrittons, you could take those dudes and put them anywhere and they're going to hunt the heck out of your property because they're hunting bucks that are really smart.
Yep.
And they'll go into your property because public is, here's the thing, public's no different than private. Okay. The only thing, the difference is just, just different volume. And Mississippi, I don't know if you've watched that podcast they did with them guys from Mississippi, but they were literally GPSing hunters and bucks. Okay.
That's interesting.
And they took a whole season in. The 5.5-year-old buck, dude, that they had pegged a 5.5-year-old,
right under their nose.
He laid down while 2 hunters went around him. 2 hunters went around him. So you look at what you're talking about there, where he's in I'm assuming it's a high grass ditch or something that he's coming up out of, or.
So it's a big ditch. You're right, and it's got a creek bottom and bottom, but it's cedars.
Yep.
Thick cedars all the way up, and it's got a waterway turns into a creek in a V. And then it turns into one single one that runs all the way down.
Yep.
And it basically runs I'm going to say the whole length, but there's a field in between. But basically the whole length of that whole property from running north to south. Well, he was down in the thickest part of that is where he came out of. And after the season was over.
Do you think his back was turned towards this, I guess, the creek bottom, or do you think he was monitoring with the wind coming over his back?
So he was he would have been down in a hole.
So you think something, well, that's perfect for him. I mean, honestly, because if he's down in a little slough on your access path, all he's waiting for is that scent to blow down in there.
The way the wind was, and my scent, with me going around the south edge of him, the wind was blowing right into him. And where he came out of was on the north end.
So he was already trying to go out the back end already.
Yep, he's already trying to go the back door.
So he was sitting ridge to back.
Yep. So by the time we wrapped around him, it's a good ways. We wrapped around him and came back up where we're coming back up to that stand. Our wind wouldn't have got to him by then. So
right.
I think he was trying to backdoor and come out, and unfortunately he missed. I'd have been thrilled if Jarrett was able to take this deer.
Yeah.
Thrilled. Well, that was the first youth season. Well, the very next week, I think it was like maybe Thursday, I went out with my bow. I was like, okay, I'm going to come in a different way, get the same wind. But I brought in just kind of did a hanging hunt, and I brought in this little bitty baby gorilla stand I've had since I was in high school.
Gotcha.
Little bitty platform, real lightweight, and I just maybe put like 12 foot up in this big oak tree. And I had a smaller oak tree and a big oak tree in front of me. Had plenty of cover, good canopy that dropped down real low, and acorns everywhere. I mean, everywhere.
That's one thing I love about the farm that I hunt, man. There's so many big oaks. They're so key.
Yeah. So it was probably an hour before dark. Still it was warm. We had a warm season this year.
No, last year sucked, dude.
Yeah.
Season wise,
So,
for me anyway. I just fought it all year, that heat. I did, and it made it kind of easy to pin where the does were going to be. But that's the kind of the problem. Everybody was going to those water holes.
Yeah.
It wasn't just bucks; it was all of them. And I think it really just. You talk about those little ditches like that. He don't have to leave for water. He don't have to leave really for food unless he wants to in the end of the evening. You can go back there and chew cud. I mean,
yep.
And he's in a bowl. You know why he's in a bowl, because any time that wind switch is letting him know that you're there.
Oh yeah.
Anytime, because once it gets down there, it stays there.
Yeah. So I'd set up in that oak tree, and there's like a.
So was that, time out real quick, was that oak tree on the back door before he
Yes.
went out? Okay,
Yep,
just
it was on
I figured that's what you were talking about.
Yep, it came. I got down from towards the direction he came
Came
from.
from.
So
Okay.
I'm down from his bedding area.
Okay.
Wind's blowing in my face, and I was like, there's not a good chance that he's going to come back this way again.
Right.
With no one walking around and forcing him to go this way, because he's probably going to go into the wind. I was like, man, I don't want to go that way again and bump him again.
Right.
And try and get in here. But anyway, I got lucky because I got up in that stand, got all set up, got up there at like 11 o'clock in the morning to set this stand up, and I sat there all day, all afternoon. Maybe an hour before dark, I've got that double patch throat doe and her two fawns. Fawn's still with her. Coming in.
I have that a lot. Fawns stay with the
Yep.
mother a long time. If you got good management on your property, they do. They do.
So they came in and they were feeding right underneath of me, and I mean all around this dang tree. And I was like, man, I kind of want you to move on. Like, this is awesome, but the longer you're here, the better chances are you're gonna pin me, and peg me where I'm at. Well, they ended up moving on, and I'm so busy watching them, I don't notice this buck is probably 100 yards behind them coming. I was like, and I just see a deer out in the field through the trees. I'm like, what in the world? And then I catch the glimpse. I was like, oh shoot, that's
a big one.
That's
Yeah.
a nice one. I didn't know for sure it was him yet.
Right.
I was like, well, he's decent, and I was bow hunting, so like 140 or better with a bow.
Yeah,
I'm slinging one.
Yeah.
But he comes around the corner. He's walking the field edge. I mean, when I say it's a field edge, it's just a pasture.
Okay.
And just walking the edge, and he's coming, and I got plenty of cover, but I'm like, I'm froze. Like, I was like, crap. Like, I don't want to move. I got these does over here to my right. What do I do? So eventually, I get my bow. I get it out. I've already got one knocked to get my release on, and I stand up real slow. And he's coming, and I was like, he's gonna come right with them does. But again, it was a little early for. He's probably not super ready yet.
And he might be checking them out, but not super in it. Yeah.
So then, instead of him peeling in front of me, he goes out about 40 yards. Perfect, right here. He goes out like 40 yards. I'm like, hell, I've been practicing shooting out to 100 for my archery elk hunt that year.
Hunt, yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, this is
I can do it.
money. And I was, confident up to 65, 70 yards. Like, no questions asked. I knew I could hit a paper plate or less. I was zoning.
Right.
Luke Crook and I have been shooting all summer.
I tell you what, that boy does a lot of shooting, and
I thought I did that year.
He really needs to dive into doing something like that. Honestly, I think he'd be a really good person to get into. Like, he would be a great bow tuner. He'd be a great person to have a bow shop.
That's his
like
passion.
his. That really is. That's all he loves it.
I think he shoots elite too.
Yeah. Well, no, I think he switched to prime.
You're right.
I think he switched to that prime last year.
He did.
From what I just talked to him not long ago, but I think so. Yeah.
So he came out like 40 yards, and got my Vortex rangefinder, and I'm hitting him 40 every time. And I had adjustable slider, just 40.
How do you like that adjustable slider?
So I've switched to something else after that year. I had that just for bow hunting out west, and I was like, I've got it. I'm not gonna have two setups.
Right.
So I just. At the time,
I'm just not good at it. Maybe I suck at it. I don't know, or I'm just not good under that pressure. When
I had, it was a single pin slider, CBE.
That's what I hunt. CBE.
Yeah.
I like CBE's products.
Yeah.
Like, I love their products.
That's good stuff.
And they're not break your bank. You know what I mean?
No,
like
they've got all the way from.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they've got
collar
break
to
your bank, but they've
good.
got the consistency of their product carries down to their lower end. I think. I think anyway. Because that one's, I don't know, $80 or something like that. I think not even maybe $70, $80 or something like that. It's not a crazy expensive site, but it kills the heck out of them. Like it does.
Yeah. So anyways, at 40 yards, I'm at full draw, and I had a 2-blade solid Legend, double bevel, and I love them. I still use them.
So I'm on the fence of that too this year. It's fixed.
So I used, dude, when I was in high school / college, I had so many bad experiences with Rage when they first came out with.
I'm not a Rage fan. I'm a G5 guy all the way.
I know they've changed a lot, and guys kill a ton of deer with them. It's just like, man, there's a lot that could go wrong.
Don Higgett said it best: "If it can go wrong, why carry it to you in the woods?"
Yeah. So
why? And I'm like, you're right. You're not wrong.
So I went over. I was like, watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I was like, I'm gonna try double bevel. Double blade. Well, 2-blade. This actually it's a 4-blade, but the 2 of the 4 blades are just
like a nap or like a
bleeder.
Yeah,
like a 1/2-inch bleeder is what they call them.
Yep. It pegs off that other,
Yeah,
opposite side.
dude.
Yeah.
Awesome broadheads. Best ones I've ever used.
Exodus has a really good one like that, and
Yep.
so does Nap. Nap's got another one that's pretty. I've been on the fence about what I want to use this year.
Yep.
I think about making a heavy arrow setup and
I think mine's about 485.
I think I was shooting 500 on the nose last year.
Yeah.
125 grain broadhead.
Yeah. So anyway, back to 40 yards, full draw. I'm steady. I mean, I'm on him. He ducks. I'm 100% sure, clean miss. I go out there, no hair, no blood, no nothing. Can't even.
Corey just said, haha, I use raised chisel tip. Laugh out loud.
Yeah. But, and he kills
Hey,
big ones.
he
too.
kills big ones. I can't sit there and say no. He cracks me up with all the time. Like, he goes over gear all the time. He's like, dude, I'm just using regular old this. And that's proof, guys. You don't need to do all the crazy stuff. That
You know
big
what?
ones.
You know what I was just dead set on back in the day? Muzzy MX3s.
Muzzy just still, like, I don't care what nobody said. Muzzy
used to-
still
you
makes
used to be able to
great
blow through them
stuff.
front
Oh,
shoulders like
dude.
nothing.
Why don't we go back to stuff like that? You know, the age-old tale, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
But we try to fix it when it ain't broke all the time.
Yep.
Try to get that slight advantage. That's the worst part about whitetails, especially mature ones. Every
Yep.
little slight advantage, you take it into consideration, and it becomes like more than what it needs to be, I
Yep.
feel. But no, anyway, 40 yards, shot right over him.
So he ducked and turned. You know how they do?
They spin.
Turn like
Yeah.
that. I was like, oh my God, heart sunk. I wanted to throw the damn bow out of the tree. I was mad. Just heartbroken. I mean, he's one of the best deer that I've had the opportunity to
Let me
harvest.
see this
you know?
guy. I'd be pretty heartbroken if I missed this guy too. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah. So I didn't find hair. I found my arrow the next day. I went back out there, and I don't use.
Did you hear
knock
that,
or anything.
guys? He found his arrow, got discouraged, and went back out, the next day?
Yep. I went out the next morning.
Don't get discouraged.
Yeah. Went out the next morning. I just didn't want to give up on him just yet. I went out again. I hunted a little bit in that morning, but I wanted to just track some more, just make sure that I knew it was a miss, because I wanted to find that arrow, make sure there's no blood on it. No blood. I found it, no blood. I was like, okay, clean miss. He's not gonna, he might be messed up for a couple days, a week, or he might be long gone. You know, you never know. So I took a couple days off because I had to work. I worked swing shifts, so I needed to work. Took a couple days off, and then rifle season came. And I hunted the first couple of days. Didn't really see a whole lot. Kind of got a little bit discouraged, but I had vacation. I'm like, nope, I'm going to go. November.
I think a lot of people run into that right there.
Yeah. If I'm going to take vacation, I'm not going to sit on my ass at home.
Yeah. I mean, and when it comes to that, though, like, I try to tell guys, I've got buddies that are trying to get into this hunting, and trying to do those things. Not because they want to kill the biggest deer, just because they want the therapy of it.
Mm-hmm.
The tree therapy, dude.
That's what I tell my wife.
It's real.
I was like, I would much rather spend an entire day sitting in the deer stand eating a Snickers bar and a ham and cheese sandwich than sitting at home watching TV. Doing nothing.
Yep.
Well, how can you stand? I was like, well, if I get too bored, I got my phone.
I got my phone,
play
or
poker or something on it.
Yeah. Well, I've actually had deer walk by me when I'm playing Deer Hunter. That's dude, I did. I've got I had
Caught you with your pants down.
Really big buck one time, and I did that, and I felt so damn stupid that here I am playing it on my phone.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, I shot a 180-inch digital deer, and I've got one standing out in front of me. I'm like, you idiot.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, I get what you're saying, dude. That whole, you went in there, you didn't get discouraged, and that's what it takes. Not getting discouraged.
Yep.
Guys, pay attention to that. That was probably the biggest thing that led to the success of killing this deer.
Yep.
Is not getting discouraged.
That was November 18th. No, November 19th. That morning comes, and it was like the first kind of frosty, cold, bitter, chilly morning that we had that year.
Dude, it really didn't get.
No,
it was an odd year.
No, and now later on that day, it got hotter than hell.
Yeah.
But that morning was crisp.
What day was that? What would it have been?
November 19th. I'll have to look. I don't know exactly what day.
No, not day of the week. I'm saying what day of gun season was that? That would have been.
So it opened on the 15th, so 4 days into it.
4 days into it.
Those might have been like what opens on.
That whole little stretch right there, that 5 days was pretty cool in the mornings. Because I killed one early morning, and then it got hot. Well, not hot, but 60 degrees.
Yeah. So I didn't hunt in that same stand that I missed him with my bow. I went to the opposite end because the night before I was rifle hunting on the 18th that night, and I was driving out after dark, and I don't know what it is, but that farm that's so good on the opposite side of the gravel, bet there's 15 does piling out of that onto my property. I'm like, oh,
man,
this is about to get good. I'd never hunted that draw before because it was so close to the road on that end, on that south end. I mean, part of it actually goes up to the road.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you,
down.
They don't notice landmarks like that.
Yeah, so I was like, man, okay, well, what do I do? And I was sitting there and I was talking to my dad that night on the phone. I was like, man, there's an old deer stand up in there that, I know that's there, but I don't even know if it's still connected to the tree. And I was like, well, the wind's going to be good. It's super easy to get into. I mean, all I got to do is park on the gravel road and walk maybe 100 yards into this tree stand.
Yep.
I was like, maybe.
That goes right along with that access I was talking about.
Yeah.
Fringe hunting. It's such a thing that's becoming a thing. It's fringe hunting. You want to create a sanctuary. You want to create something where you're not disturbing a lot of activity. You don't have to walk in 10 miles.
Well,
fringe hunt.
I hadn't scouted that spot too much, so I walked through there maybe twice in 4 or 5 years of hunting this farm.
Right.
And I just knew that stand was in there. So I was like, I don't know what kind of shape it's in. I might just hunt from the ground. I don't know. Well, I get down there. There's some brush growing up at the base of it. I'm like, man, it's going to be kind of loud getting up in it, but it's going to be like the best spot for me. Unless I go on the opposite side of the draw and look down into it. But by the time I get over there, I'm going to be making so much noise, and the wind's not right for me to go on the backside come up. So I was like, this is what I got to do.
You have to, yeah.
So I climb up in the stand. And it's only like a 10-foot ladder stand. I mean, it's nothing special, and it's looking down this bottom. Behind me is like probably behind me 200 yards ag field. And little pockets of open stuff here or there. And then
when you mean pockets, do you mean like when you say
just
pockets?
Natural grasses where just openings in the woods, and goes up to the fence low. Fence row. So I get in that stand, and I'm not kidding you, probably 5 minutes after shooting light, I can just hear the wood just come alive with deer. You can just hear them walking and crunching that frosty stuff. And I'm like,
acorns and any frost broadleaf.
Yep, and wind's in my face coming out of the north. And I just crunch. They're just getting closer and closer. Well, those does had literally bedded.
In that draw by the road.
As soon as they crossed that road, they bedded right down the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, here we go. 2 or 3 does went by me, or first thing early, and probably 20 minutes later, here comes like 7 does. And they're coming at a pretty good clip.
Yeah, they're moving.
Yeah, and I'm not talking like walking. I'm like, they're running from something.
Right.
And there hadn't been a car on the road, nothing. And I was like, oh, here we go. So I get the gun up, and sure enough, here he comes. He's right behind him, pushing. And I was like, he's moving so
Question, where was he, not to keep interrupting your story, but I'm saying, where was he pushing to, you think? Was there any rhyme or reason, or you think he was pushing to the back to that area that he was comfortable in?
The first 3 does that came by early were all big mature does.
Okay.
The rest of them were all kind of like mixed in with maybe some 2-year-olds with some fawns.
Yep.
And he was
pushing them.
And
he probably already bred the other ones.
I'm thinking maybe, but they're headed towards that ag. Is where they're headed.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, but he was moving so fast.
So where was that draw in adjacent to where he was bedding that time you and your boy watched him come out?
He would have been bedded about 500 yards to the north of where I saw him.
So when he was pushing, was he pushing him back towards
that
bed?
Instead of going like the back door where he came out the last time, he went towards
it. So he was pushing those to his bedding.
Yes.
Okay.
Pushing them back there. From
doe to male bedding.
Yep.
Okay.
So he was moving so fast, pushing them does head to the ground, grunting like crazy, and it was almost like he was a bull elk pushing his entire herd, his whole harem, up into this bedding. And I was like, I couldn't get shot. He's moving so quick in trees, and I was like, dang, he's gonna get by me. I got goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's gonna get by me. So at that point, like, I let him get by me. I stood up in the tree stand, and I turn around, and I'm trying to like pick windows. Like, I already know like the fence line is 225 yards. I used Onyx, and that was like best guess. And he got to that fence row in an opening, and it's slightly above me. And I was like, oh man. So if he stops, and all the does are out there eating, and it's like a mixture between like clover and some, just
clover,
native
chicory
grasses,
probably, or native stuff.
And I was like, man, if he gives me a shot, I'm gonna take it. So I've got him, and I'm lined up, and by then I've already got the buck fever out of my system.
Because he's done run by.
Now it's like a vendetta. Like, okay, you got by me. I'm not gonna let you get away from me. Well, he just happens to step in the biggest opening I got, and he stops. And I can see about half his rack down. So I was like, and he's the only buck that's with him, so I know it's him, and I know it's him, no doubt. And so I get him in the scope, I get the crosshairs, I shoot, nothing. I'm like, what in the world? And I'm gonna go ahead and mention I was using a 6.5 Creedmoor, which I will never do again after this hunt.
I told you that. Look, I'm gonna sit here and say I've had one told you moment situation with that. I literally said that to you in a at Farming Home one time because I was going in there to get 270 rounds, and you're like, I'm using that 6.5. I said, if you ain't hit him dead in the shoulder, that thing is zipping through him. I used it one season, never again. I will never use a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Now I keep it for my kids because it's great for them. It's not
have they? So they haven't had any issues with it.
Luckily, every deer they've shot is dropped in the field.
Okay.
Not like maybe dropping their tracks, but I haven't had to track them.
Track them, okay. I didn't like it. I don't know if it just shot too fast or I don't know.
No blood trail.
What in its pinhole?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like for me, it felt like when I shot that buck on my grandma's farm, I literally wasn't 50 yards from that deer.
Yeah. So with this buck, he was slightly above me. I didn't think I had to put in consideration that he was just slightly above.
Yeah.
But when I shot, it kind of went up at an angle in him, and it didn't like go through like both lungs. I just got one.
You clipped one.
But it went all the way through him.
Okay.
But I think I just clipped the one lung. Well, guess which way he ran?
He probably ran back towards
the road.
The road, yeah.
So he went over the road onto that property that hasn't been hunted in 60 years.
So his main sanctuary is probably there.
He ran there, and I'd never been over there. The farmer always told me, he said, if you ever kill one, before every season I go have a chat with him. Can I hunt?
Yeah, can I hunt? No.
No, but I was like, well, what happens? I know they're so close. You got a gravel road. If I get one that gets over on you, can I go? And I was like, I'll come talk to you before I do it. But
right.
I want to be able to know, like, if I have the opportunity to shoot a nice deer and I know it's probably going to run over there, I want to know that I'm at least going to be able to
retrieve him. Yeah.
So sure shit, runs right over there. Blood trail's really thin, and I waited probably an hour. And I was like, I know I hit him. I heard it hit him.
Right.
He just didn't react like a hit deer would react. And I was like, shit.
Did he stand?
No, he took off immediately.
Okay,
but
so
tail
did he
was
kick?
up. He didn't like have a tail and hunch.
Really?
Tail was up, and he was bounding just like he would, a unhit
deer. Non-hit on deer, yeah.
And I was like, what in the world? Well, I go up there, and it's so frosty, I can see where those deer have been running around. So I was like, okay, well, I found one speck of blood. I mean, like that. That's it. On my side.
Right.
So I knew
you think it was because, yeah? I mean.
Blood, the exit hole.
Do you think you hit high?
I did hit high. I hit kind of upper shoulder. Corey might know. He's the one that probably skinned him out.
Okay. No, I can chat him right now. Where did he hit this deer?
Yeah. But yeah, I hit him high shoulder, and I think it came out even higher shoulder on the other side. So all that blood just pulled below.
Yep.
And
I think I did that same thing with a buck last year.
Yep. So
I never did find him though.
Oof.
160-ish plus, maybe bigger, maybe low 170s.
Yeah.
12-point split brows, about a 22, 23-inch spread.
Yeah.
Just made me want to throw up. But it was pouring down rain, and
yeah, you didn't find
I was
that,
like,
unless you have a dog.
I got one out back, but at the time he wasn't full trained, and I'm like, I'm not gonna booger it up with him being in there, and
Luckily, he ran on across the neighbor, which I knew I'd be able to go retrieve.
Right,
so I waited like an hour. I called my dad, and I can't remember now. I don't think he wasn't hunting that morning. He's got some back problems.
Right.
But he's like, get one down or wherever you get him, let me know. Give me a call. Come help you. I'm like, okay. So I call him. I was like, hey, I know I hit him. I found a speck of blood. He ran over onto the neighbor. So he's like, well, go talk to him. I was like, I'm going to. So I went ahead and walked back to my truck. Got in the truck, drove down that. I mean, his driveway is long. I mean, it's like smack dab in the middle. It's like 450 acres. And
that's sweet.
It's not an easy driveway to navigate either. I mean, it has not been maintained. I mean,
gotta love them old farm boys.
Well, my truck's say 8 foot wide. The road's 7 foot 11. It's like, it was pretty
made
sketchy.
For a Mazda Miata and not a truck.
So I get all the way down there. I talk to the guy. Pretty sure I woke him up. 9 o'clock in the afternoon. Woke him up, and he's like, "Yeah." He said, "Go get him. Where do you think he's at?" I said, "I mean, I haven't been on you yet, so I don't really know. Once you cross the road, I can't see nothing because it goes back downhill. Can't see anything. Well, I get on that side of the road, start looking at where they cross and stuff, and he opens up. I mean, he starts bleeding pretty good. I'm like, okay, this is good blood, bubbly blood. So I knew I got a lung. And I maybe tracking like 100 yards through some timber on him, and I blow up a bunch of does. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay, so yeah, those does went back.
They're with,
with him.
Yep.
Probably.
So we look. Well, little do I know that buck was still up an hour and a half later.
Really?
I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So I stop, and I'm like, I'm just gonna quit. So I walk back up to that guy's house. I was pretty close to his house by that point. Like, look, he's still alive. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe he was still alive. And
I tracked that one for, dude, miles. It was a big circle, and luckily it was on the farm that my grandparents had owned, or still own, and it really wasn't that bad, but it was a long ways. And that is just really weird how that bullet opened up. It seemed like it didn't even open up until I had hit the other side of the shoulder.
Yeah.
Like it was a perfect broadside shot that I'd done right behind, right in that sweet spot where you want to be.
Yep.
It just like it didn't open up until it was through the lungs and out the other side almost. Like it hit that first initial, cut right through it, hit the other side of that deer, and then blew up. Like at least that's what I'm not a gun specialist, but
expanded on the exit.
That's what it looked like. The lungs had literally pinholes. I had knocked out the top probably a half inch into the top of both of his lungs, in the top.
They're tough animals, man.
Well, I mean, yeah, that too. That also is a massive, massive thing. They are tough, extremely tough animals.
Yeah.
But like with him, when you did that, when you gutted him out, did you look at any of that or?
Yeah. So I got just the top of one lung. Is all I got.
Okay.
And that's.
That's literally that's not 100% the gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it was shot placement was some of it too.
Yeah.
But
same with me when I hit that. But for me, I noticed how little it did to the top. I mean, that should have been. If that had been a 30-06, it would have destroyed.
Flipped him inside out.
Yeah, 2-3 inches of his lungs down from where it impacted would have been screwed up. You know what I mean? Yep. And that didn't happen. So I'm wondering if there's something to that.
I don't know, but look, I walked back up to that guy's house, that farmer's house, and I was like, look, he's still alive. He's hit. I mean, I found blood. I said, I'm going to give him a little bit longer. And I was like, he's like, well, I don't care where you go. Just be careful because we got some livestock over there. And
okay.
Might get after you because his livestock are not very, they don't get
They don't see, much. Yeah, they don't see what humans.
They're nuts. So I was like, okay, well, I'm standing there, Dad and I are standing there, and we just happen to like look up. And his house is, where his house is, kind of sits up, and you kind of look down on some of his fields and CRPs and stuff. And just happen to see all these does running. I don't see that buck with him now. I'm like, what in the world? So I'm looking, I count 10 does, just like I had this morning. The morning before, there's all 10 of them. That buck's not with them. I was like, well.
Wonder if he expired down there.
So I was like, well, I'm going to go back to where I last saw him, found blood. I didn't go 30 yards. I found him dead.
Really? Jumped him up enough?
He
See, that's interesting.
And he ran and bedded down again. And I
that
think just
enough.
by him getting that extra little boost, I found a huge blood clot.
Dude, okay.
Between the two beds, between where I jumped him and found him dead. I think once he spit that blood clot, he was done.
Done. Yeah. There was nothing there to hold anything that he did have, from licking them wounds.
And I'm telling you what, when I gutted him, I can't believe he ran as far as he did because there's so much blood in him.
Yeah. Like a 5-gallon bucket, dude. It's wild how that works.
Yep.
And with that deer that I shot last year, it's almost kind of similar, except in bow standards. I told you I forgot my bow release that day, and I happened to have the kids' crossbow. So I was like, well, I just drove 48 minutes. I'm hunting,
I'm not too proud to use a crossbow.
I'm not at all. Like I tell people all the time, man, dude, I love ghillie hunting. Get a good ghillie suit, go into a buck nest, get into it real early.
Yep.
Use a creek bed and have fun with a crossbow. Just try it one time, you'll have a blast doing it. You at least do it once a year. And I took that crossbow, and it wasn't no slouch. We're talking a Hypertech 420. So I mean, it's shooting 420 feet per second, and it had a 3-inch head or a 2.5 inch mega meat expand on there. And I'll show you a picture of a buck from the week before that got shot by that same crossbow, dude. If you'd have seen that, you'd have been like, oh my gosh, dude. Because when that deer dropped, I've never in my life seen a deer hit that hard, hit the ground that hard. He exploded his heart. Like
Oh,
he
I
hit
believe
him
it.
center mass at 10
in
yards,
chest?
right in the chest.
Dude, I've got a story like
Center
that too.
mass, chest. It blew all the way through him. That crossbow blew all the way at exited
I believe it.
about, I don't know, about 3 inches in front of his hind quarter on the opposite side.
I've got a story almost identical
Blew
to
out
that.
through that. And when he hit the ground, a boy was like, "Oh my gosh, is he dead?" I'm like, "Oh no, he's dead, dude. No, he's toast."
Yeah.
I watched all of it, all the blood come out right in front of him. I'm like,
Did you get on camera?
I didn't. I was setting up the camera when this was going down. My buddy Eric, who had never hunted in his life before, that was his first experience. 10 yards, nice 10-pointer on public
tell you
land.
that story about never a hunter that's first time hunting. Yeah, when you're done with this, I'll tell that one.
That dude I was talking about though with that same crossbow, so I know it was effective. He did the same thing. He was slightly quarter two. I don't know how that guy was. He was just, he was coming across the field, and I was sitting here, and he come across the field, and he stopped about 30-ish yards. And, at first I didn't know what buck it was. I knew it had a nice wide 8-point on there that was also a younger deer, and I was like, I got to make sure it's not him.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as he took that second bound in the field, I'm like, oh, no, that's a giant. Like, oh, crap, that's Uncle Buck. And he paused, shot, and I think I hit him in that no man's land. I think he died because I had a buck that ran around with him during the summertime, and they were together all the time.
Yep.
They literally, but when it got to that mid-October, and they started getting those spots where they're like, no, this is my home range.
Yep, you need to move on.
You need to move on. He didn't have pictures of that Voldemort buck for a month, and I shot that deer October 28th or 29th, something like that. It was late, and I shot him sitting underneath my trail camera. I literally went to the trail camera on a scrape, and I was like, this is the only spot I can sit. Like, literally, it's the only wind I can sit. And he was coming to check a doe bedding ground across there. Well, when I shot him, I think I did that same thing like you did. I did not account for that. Elevation. He was higher than me.
Yep.
And I didn't even think about, when I get in that bow mindset when I'm.
You aim for the exit on the opposite side.
Yes.
Yep.
And I boogered it. I promise you, I hit that deer in no man's. Either I hit him in no man's land or I clipped him like you said, which has now got me really interested of trying to find out where that buck really was homebodying. Because I bet you he might have went down there and died. Because he ran 736 yards.
Wow.
4 beds. 4 beds. 4 beds on that buck. And I'm not talking little amounts of blood. I'm talking like me and Chad sat there like, how is this deer not dead?
Got a lot more blood than you think in him, apparently.
Dude, I'm talking. When I did that tracker, I started from the spot that I shot him, and I hit that tracking mode on X. And I followed the trail, 736 yards of following that deer to the last point that I seen him. And it was raining real hard. So when I went in there, I was like, man, we're either going to, if we bump him more than twice, or something, then we know we need to let him lay. And it was that second bump, but he had 2 other beds before that. And the only reason I don't think that we jumped him on those beds is because that wasn't 40 yards into the woods where he went into is where that first one was. So he was hurting. He was hurting real bad, but I think I had that same scenario almost. Like,
do you think you hit him a little back?
I think it's possible. I mean, like the way he was, like if you were to sit here and say you're in my position, he's looking at you like this. Say my phone's him, right? And you're 40 yards away. He was coming across the field and I was sitting on this edge of the field and I stopped him. Just perfect. And I put it a little further back because I knew my exit, right? Well, when I hit him, I think he ducked enough and I think I just hit that no man's land, and with everything above it, how he was sitting up kind of higher, I think that sounds really similar. When you said it, he was up a little bit. It like ticked in my brain. I'm like, man, I wonder,
I've seen it a lot. Like, if you shoot a deer pretty far back, sometimes they'll bed pretty quickly, or sometimes they won't even run off because you've been punched in the gut, I'm sure. Or got knocked out. You're like, you don't want to go anywhere, And
that's a good point. I never even thought of that.
They bedded down. I've seen several, not that I've helped track.
Right.
Bedded down pretty close to where they've shot
because they were shot more in the gut.
Because they're shot in the guts or intestines. Yep.
I mean, and oddly, I don't know. It's like I said, it was misting by the time that Chad had got there, so trying to really tell what blood I was in was pretty much not a thing, and so that part sucked. That part was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
So that part, but like you said, he generally went back to an area like almost immediately of where he was comfortable. And it's,
Yeah.
and it's wild because you hear about guys that shoot big bucks and they're like, yeah, he went straight down into a draw as soon as I shot him. And I'm like, dude, he was trying to gun. Put that
Get
in your
somewhere.
arsenal. Where he's going, where he beds. If you find out where he beds and where you hunt, if you do have a deer like that, and that was kind of where I was getting with that was I really didn't have a good grasp of where that buck was bedding. I knew he was over on this area called the Crab Car, but I didn't you knew where that buck had been bedding on the neighbors.
Yep.
And so right out the gate when you shot him,
I had an idea.
Yes.
And after I shot this buck, I really stepped back and I was like,
where did he go?
I need to look at this area. Here, I'll pull up a picture, and you just tell me how good of an area this place looks.
That makes total sense there because he started headed back towards this cedar patch, and I don't go in this cedar patch ever. If I go in there, I'm going after a buck that I shot, and he's dead in there somewhere. You know what I mean? That's the only time I go in that cedar patch off the Crab Claw area. And I thought that's where he was, but I never did find him. And it's thick in there, so there's a very good possibility I didn't even see him. Oh, yeah.
So it's super thick. That is right on a creek bank and a big bluff behind him.
Bluff knocks off, creek bank in the bottom. Probably.
He came down that and slid. I mean, he slid on his chest. You can see where he just bulldozed down.
Yeah.
He was dead on the top trying to get that water.
That looks almost identical to a spot that I have in my place. It's a creek bottom like that, and I think that's where that big giant was bedding, dude.
Yep.
And I screwed up and moved a freaking stand in his bed. I was trying to get close. I really thought he was living on neighbors. I actually think he was just living in that. I literally went, no, Buck's going to be right here, but I know he's traveling through here. No, it wasn't that. He was living in that spot that I should have been no, Buck's living there. And that's kind of a thing that when you go to hunt these big deer, I always try to piece together more than one.
There you go. If you look in the background there, you can
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Straight downhill.
Yep. 100% straight down. And that's another thing, too. With going straight down, when you're hit, you wouldn't want to run uphill.
I've seen
You know what I mean? So, pay
attention.
I've seen it, but not very often. And if they do run uphill, they don't go far. Usually, in my experience, they're probably on the other side of that hill if they make it up that hill. But I look at that whole area like that. That looks just like a spot that we have on a farm. It's called the Crab Claw area where we have it. It's just a bunch of dump offs into a creek. Just a ton of them.
So this kind of area where he was bedding in was on the backside of all that CRP on that guy's farm.
So when you say backside of his CRP, was it in a back corner? Was it in?
So kind of how it works is you got a system of fields and fingers. That old grown up fence rows. They're livestock fields that are all grown up is what it is. It's not like actual CRP.
I've been hearing a lot of people talk about these old livestock farms and how they're producing some serious deer in there.
Yeah. So I don't know. You've probably got 200 yards of that between the road and then the timber. But I'm telling you what, as soon as you get in that timber, it is the thickest, nastiest stuff for 50 yards, and then it opens up into the big timber.
Big woods. With
nothing really underneath. But
question on that, where that thick stuff is. Are you finding trails 15 foot off the main ag?
Oh yeah.
In those thick areas like that? Because I was trying to explain that to a buddy of mine, Caleb Stack. He was talking about a property that he was kind of having trouble with, and trying to figure out. He's like, oh, they got all these great lanes, these great fingers, but I'm finding trails in spots that I just wouldn't normally think that a deer.
Yeah.
So, I'm like
that buck there.
Yeah. Probably was he on one of those little highways?
On those side of the farm, I was telling you, the doe was on one trail and he was on the next trail.
Yep.
It's probably 15 yards, 20 yards off of the pasture.
Yes.
And both of those trails run parallel from. I'm not gonna say the entire farm.
The buck was on the less traveled one, and the doe was on the heavy.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm gonna say that probably from halfway.
Did they cross at some point? They intersect.
Oh yeah, they bee and split and do this. It's run parallel with the field all the way down to the south end of that farm.
Yep. And I tell guys that all the time. And that was kind of where I was going with that with Caleb Stack. I told him, I said, man, he's probably running an area that's not far off the heavy traveled one. If it looks like it's a spot that and I've found this, and this is just studies that I've done myself personally on public land, because you got an influx of deer that are on public land when you have 7,000 acres to hunt. And every single one of the heavy ones, I had guys that were like, man, I sat right on that trail and all I seen was does on it. I'm like, yeah, because the one that the bucks ones you're using are the ones that are crossing that trail.
Yeah.
They're not even on the same trail as that female. They're just trying to check doe bedding grounds in the least amount of headgear catch. That's what I like to call it.
I'm gonna show you a buck that got away. I'm pretty sure he's dead.
I got one like that, man, and it's a sad deal.
And
I'm telling you, I am. I'll have to show you a picture of that Uncle Buck, and I'm telling you, you're gonna be bummed for me.
So you know that big 8 I was showing you.
Yeah.
That I killed.
With the wild wild genetical side.
Same spot.
Was he using that? Was that buck using a? Oh yeah, that one hurt. That's a 160-inch deer.
No.
That might be 100. That might be more than that. That's 170, probably 180.
I've got a shed from here 2 years before that would have been a 160-inch buck as a 3.5-year-old.
You know, I'm finding a lot of 3.5-year-olds that are getting big frames.
And again, back to the point restriction thing.
No, 100%. 100%.
So I had already filled my tag.
That makes you want to throw up.
And
when you fill your tag and see that,
our family tradition, the last weekend of rifle season, we kind of we go push draws and for a day. We just do it a day, maybe till like noon or whatever. Well, tell you how smart these things are. This buck, I kind of had an idea where he was bedding at because again, it was on my personal farm where I live.
Right. I
kind of know where.
You get a feel for watching them.
Very limited spots for these deer to bed.
Well, I've looked at that farm. Yeah,
So
I would hone in on those little bitty.
I'm gonna try and focus more this year because I've got the baby coming.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have your hands full. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm.
I understand it. I'm dealing with that now.
Yeah.
So.
I'm gonna have to hunt from home basically.
Basically, yeah.
Luckily, it's a good farm though. I'm
not limited on what can be done on that place.
So
I have to come out there really sometime and give you some thoughts that
Before
of what I would do.
Tall, we need to get you out there and you can take a look. But
I found out that mock scrapes are probably the most important thing. If you don't have like that farm, there's not a lot of woods.
You know the Charlie buck I showed you, that big neck one? He used those pictures on a mock scrape.
Yep. And they say you can dang near direct a lot of traffic to pinch points that you want to hunt with those mock scrapes. And I literally just did it yesterday. I literally went in yesterday and put in like 15 different ones on my home farm, kind of pushing around areas and going into funnels like me and you talked about. We like to hunt funnels in areas that we know that are they're easy access, they're a funnel, and it creates, I think, a perfect pinch for deer. Deer are going to be there.
Yeah. And,
with your farm that you're talking about there, you have a lot of those little pinch points.
Oh, it's like the whole farm.
Yeah, but what's keeping them there? Look at it from an aerial.
Ton of ag, ton of water, and so it's a really good late season farm because there's so much hunting pressure on the outside edges. I don't mess with it for like at least the first week. I don't even plan on it. And everything just kind of
comes in.
And you can see it. And I know the deer are coming because I've got an old apple tree in my front yard, and I've got a coon dog. He's the best farm dog ever.
Yeah.
He goes ape shit.
Yeah. He goes nuts. I got one back there.
Yeah. Right in my front yard, they'll be coming and eating all the apples that have been dropped.
They say persimmons too, like just fruit trees bearing, there's all kinds of little bitty things that you can do. Like planting an apple tree, like you said, like you're talking about right now. If you're able to do it, and that little hole that he was in, the one that you had where you had that window where he came out into,
put out a tree, give him something to stop that.
100%, 100%. Now it's not going to do nothing for you. That's why I say persimmons. Persimmons are fast. The yield's faster, and they're a little bit tougher tree.
Yep.
You know what I mean? As far as
and they're native here too. Not that apple trees aren't, but.
But I'm telling you, dude, you'd be blown away at what those deer are going to do.
I know on some private or some public ground right now that I found a good little persimmon grove, and it's not easy to get to. I was just mushroom hunting, and I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!"
Yeah, like this is perfect.
Yep. But
mental note.
Now back to that buck that got away there. I called that buck Joker, and dude, he's got 17 scorable.
Do you think he's still there? Or?
No, he's dead. I know he's dead. I think he got hit on the highway. Because one morning during late bow season, right where I parked my truck, there was this car that had been parked there and hazards were on. The whole front end was just
destroyed,
demolished. Probably a quarter mile down from where I parked. I went ahead and went in and hunted, and I needed to check some cameras and stuff while I was in there later on that morning. And on my way out, that car was still there, so I drove by, and there was a buck with his head cut off. And it was a huge bodied deer, and that farm is only 32 acres on that little section of farm that I hunt because it's not connected to my farm that I live on. But I'm 95% sure
that was him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But tell you how smart he is.
Let's hope it was a roamer.
No, I have not got a single picture of him since, and
I haven't of that Uncle Buck one that I
was getting pictures of him.
I've got it in my
day.
mind. He's toast.
Yeah,
Like,
I bet I've got 350 pictures of that deer in one season.
I
was
had
almost on him.
I had 11,000 photos of that giant 180-inch buck. 11,000 from. I have to show some. I filled several SD cards. I'd put an 8 gig out there. I'd put a 16 gig.
I've got 32s on all mine.
I do now. I don't run it. I actually don't run anything.
I run a lot of video though, just because.
I do in certain seasons. I know that sounds dumb, maybe for most, because I'm really a lot of the reason I run cameras in the way I do is because I really do. I am very interested in why deer do what they do in certain seasons, and I'm down to the point where I really like watching. With the video thing that you're talking about, I really like watching how long a buck spends on a scrape in August versus November.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why I do the video thing is I don't know how many times on one camera I get a doe with just pictures, and it takes like the 3-shot burst or the 5-shot burst, and then it's got to have that delay.
Yeah.
Reset delay, and then take some more pictures of some does. Well, then on my next camera, I'm like, I'll put a video on it. Well, in between the first doe and the second doe is a nice buck.
Right.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put like a 15, 20-second video on all of them. I've got so much more deer on camera running the videos. Yeah, it goes through your battery a little more.
Yep.
But then I started buying the rechargeable battery packs or something that lasts longer, or the solar.
I run the Tacticams now with solar on them, or I buy the lithium batteries. They're expensive. Those lithiums are they're outrageous, but
half
they're
my
worth
stuff
it.
I run the rechargeable lithiums.
Yeah.
And I'll just swap them out. But that, like you said, it's expensive.
The lithiums are expensive. Like I ran just a regular Tacticam. The SB, I think, is what it was last year's SB model or something. I got the 2.0s this year. But yeah, they ran those lithium batteries for about 4 months, and that was taken like I've on the Tacticam that I just put in on the 4th spot in. It's not unreal for that camera to have 1,500 pictures in a week.
Yeah,
it's really not, and I'm not doing a 3-shot burst. I'm doing a picture every 3 seconds. So I mean, but there's
time lapse stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what you're saying with the video. That's smart. That's really smart. Like having that in there to really tell what this buck is. Is he just coming through? Is he hitting a scrape? Is he spending time in there? Is his nose to the ground?
Yeah.
What is he doing in there?
Oh, and shit, half the time, if you got that video, like some of mine, I've got all of them. Your stealth cam, your muddies, your 5 points. You got.
Oh, I've switched pretty much to everything to Tacticam at this point because I'd stop.
I don't have one of them. My buddy Nick Waters, he's got one or two of them. He loves his.
You got to get on that game at some point. When I get this other sponsorship thing figured out, I'll hook you up with at least one of them because it'll change the way you hunt an area. If you're trying to do those hanging hunts like you were talking about, like with that buck.
I just bought a new Novix tree stand. I bought
Novix is nice.
I got it for Christmas. My mom splurged on me this year, and she
spoiled you. She spoiled you.
That thing is so nice.
Dude, Novix makes great products. They're a lone wolf, in my opinion. They're really close to the same. They've got a little. I think Novix has taken a little bit more key to what the customer wants.
Yep, I think
and that's why I think they're going to be bigger.
Yep.
I hate saying that. I'm true to you, lone wolf guys. I love my lone wolves. I've been using them for years. But they pay attention to what people want.
Yep.
A little bit closer, I think.
I got it for Christmas, and I got home that next night. Or that night, and I already had climbed up my telephone pole there in front of my house. I gotta get this thing set up. I need to get me a set of sticks for them though, because the ones that I've got, they're just too heavy.
Gotcha.
They're just a cheap farm at home.
I really like as far as sticks. Like I said, I've been using Lone Wolf. They're lighter, but if you're gonna talk about a stick that's really affordable, really good in my opinion, and not heavy, and I like the way they link together, Hawks. Hawks sticks. I'm not a big fan of their platforms. I think I'm not a big fan of foam filled aluminum.
That foam filled, that's there to dampen sound, but it also adds weight.
But for me, I don't even know if it really dampens sound because it's not dampened. It's just different.
Yeah.
And you cling something that's hard against
If
something
you got a
that's
lot of time
soft.
on your hand, you get some of them lightweight ones. You get some of that paracord,
Yeah.
braided around there. I've seen that.
I've seen guys using they've got a thicker tape now.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
And my buddy Dalton Wood, he put some of that on pretty much on every one of his stands that he had last year, and that dude kills huge deer. Like he kills big deer. But that's what he said. It's all about the dampen. But I like the Novix. I like Novix.
Yep.
Novix got some.
I'm excited to be able to
great
use
products.
it this year. So I know, like,
Is it a climber or is it just platform?
platform. It's
Yeah.
what do they call them? It's just a hanging.
Yeah, hang on
stand.
platform. Yeah, just a hang on. Yeah.
Yep. So, but it's super light.
Oh,
so
they're yep.
I can't wait. They make.
And his is they're die cast too, right? They're a solid aluminum die cast.
Yeah,
I believe.
I believe so.
I believe.
Yeah, but I haven't. I haven't done a whole lot of hanging hunting kind of stuff, and like with hunting after this buck, I was like, first hanging hunt I did on that. I'm like, man, there he is. Okay. So I just went ahead and left that stand there. Like, this is a good spot. It's a little underrated, So I've hunted it several times since and had good luck.
How do you feel about the underrated spots? Like we touched on that earlier. You said now that's 3 times I've heard you in this one segment go, man, I don't know how great this is going to be, and then turns out to be
that's
insane.
okay.
It's those overlooked property points.
So it's
I think.
I told you, like, I'm scared to dive into them spots. Yeah. It's because I don't have the experience in doing the hang and hunt kind of stuff. I'm not super quick at it because I don't have nearly enough practice.
Ooh, our battery's dying on this camera now. How long we been on this stream? 2.5 hours. Well, we may have to wrap it up, y'all, because I don't have an extension for that goes that long. Not to rush you off, man. We are gonna have you back on. I think I've saved 3 slots specific for guys that I do want to come back on for next year.
Perfect.
You're one of them.
Got it.
Mainly because like you're close, you're adaptive, and I really, 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 really like hearing how people hunt stuff around where I'm at, because it helps me.
Every area is different.
It helps me, Northeast Missouri. When I find these Northeast Missouri boys and how they're doing it, I think deer climate in an area and they do what they do, but this will be interesting. It's interesting to get some of the guys that are hunting these areas that are close to mine and figuring them out in that sense.
We need to link up this year.
Yes, I'm going to be doing I'm going to be getting behind a lot of people in the filming to this year just for fun, and I'm hoping that I can get a good buck on my property early this year than later. That's why I've been kind of switching my gear to early season bow hunting, in that heat. But yeah, no, I am completely on board with getting with you and doing some hunts, because I really want to learn some of these different tactics that you're using, because I feel like we're both in the same boat on a lot of these things. And the more guys that I talk to from this area, I'm finding out I'm almost completing their sentence before, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm like, okay, yeah, I have seen that. Like that's happening to me.
Yeah, the stuff you don't really even think about that somebody else notices. Like, you know what? Like, I've seen that too. Like, you're right.
Yeah, let's try that. And but anyway, I'm not trying to rush anybody off, and I hate that the camera's down. I'm going to figure that portion out. I had a full battery for a start, but every time I get on these podcasts, we talk for 2.5 hours, and it feels like 20 minutes.
Oh yeah,
but
it feels like it just started.
Yeah, it feels like we just started 2 hours and 17 minutes ago on the second set that we did here. So I'll be reach out, guys. Let me know on the chat certain things you want to find out, or certain things you run into. Like I always try to explain to everybody. And then secondly, go out and have fun with this stuff, guys.
Absolutely.
Go out and have fun with this stuff.
And don't take what we've said for as gospel. Like everything's different for everybody. So.
And I think properties fluctuate year to year. I think different bucks provide a different environment. You have bully bucks, you have bucks that don't care. It's all a different environment. That's why I always try to explain this doe theory that I'm trying to cook into real hard. Is I'm telling you, there's something to it.
Yep.
I feel like figuring out the does. Bucks are too sporadic. Does I can figure out. And what do bucks want? They want the does. At some point, they're gonna want them does.
Yep. Exactly.
And so figure that portion out in your lives, and if you have questions, don't feel free to ask, dude. I don't care. You can message me anytime. I'll send something back to you. I may not be what you need to hear, or what you want to hear, but I'll be as honest as I can with what I'm given.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm gonna run a quick ad for us Ridge Ghost guys, and we're probably gonna peace out of here pretty quick. But anyway, I hope you guys like this new promo we've got coming out. It's the first time I'm running it as far as on social media platform other than Facebook. But we got all the we're introducing all the new Ridge Ghost guys, which is three of us all together, including me, Chad, and Steven. And then we've got our pick of the litter, which was Caleb Stack. and he's going to be doing some fun stuff with us. But enjoy the promo.